All right, it is 7 o'clock. We are reconvening in open session. And Clerk Brickler, would you mind leading us in the Pledge of Allegiance? Oh,
there it is. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
No action was taken in closed session. And this is President Holt, and I move that we approve the agenda.
I'll second that.
Oh, actually, okay, we've got a motion on the table. All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All ayes, the motion carries. All right. Okay, and first up will be the public hearing, sufficiency of instructional materials. Oh, all right. Thank you. And is there a public comment? Okay, seeing none, we are closing public hearing at 7:01. Okay. Moving to item 7, special presentations, starting with human resources.
So the board requested some information on exit interviews and where we are with some of the work we're doing with HR. Michelle Bunt is going to present that information tonight.
You have to have it on for the people at home and for the.
You're okay. Need a moment to get it out. Do I need the clicker? I want to advance my Zoom. The little thing is in the way. The little participant thing that's in contact. That's okay. Okay, good evening, trustees and AUSD community. Thank you for having me. And I'm going to talk about our staffing in the prior year and what that meant for AUSD and where we're at current year. The Auburn Union School District has been experiencing an ongoing increase in labor retention members with certificated, classified, and administrative positions, meaning we have a very low retention rate. Recruiting has become more difficult over the years and even more so since post-COVID. And this is due to some of the reasons that we have looked at. And this is working with other districts as well, and in our own surveys that we've been doing. Employees have more opportunities to move around or go closer to their home base. We have a lot of shortages in other districts that are near us, which presents open opportunities for them. Employees who are in jobs that are in high demand, those positions tend to get filled quickly. So very hard to fill right now are English single subjects, math single subjects, resource, and special day class teachers.
May I ask, sorry to interrupt, are these numbers, these are the numbers of employees who left the district within that year?
We're getting to, oh, I'm sorry. You shouldn't have seen that yet.
Okay.
So,
Okay.
I didn't realize I must have clicked in fear. Okay, short hiring span to recruit. Typically your March 15th layoffs go out. Then you go, all teachers have the same basic rights of going through hearings after they've received their notices. So typically your recruiting span is between April and July 15th. That's a really short span to start going out there and doing recruiting. So it tends to be very competitive the months of April and May. Less teachers entering the workforce. So that will come in here. That's another number. 26% of teachers retired last year from STIRS. This year, they're expecting 29% more. There are less teachers entering the field as well. Other educational opportunities. We've had a lot of teachers who have left our district that have gone into other positions. They've done homeschool or they've gone into tutoring. They've developed their own businesses. We've had 3 that have opened their own tutoring and educational businesses for parents post-COVID who still chose to teach their students at home. Yes, so these are our numbers, pretty staggering. 1920, we lost 59 employees. Certificated and classified, I grouped them all together. Classified could mean mental health professionals because they're classified, they're licensed. Certificated could mean anything from psychs, teachers, and then of course admin are both. This was our biggest year with 65 employees, 36 certificated. That's from 7/1/22 to 6/30/23. 22 classified. That's an extreme amount of numbers. We had 221 employees when we started July 1, 2022. So that'll tell you an easy percentage of what we're looking at. You're losing about 1/3 of your population. And we're losing that annually, but we're gaining it back. So there's that was always the struggle that I had in putting this together is we're losing employees, but we're also gaining back employees. So why the constant rollover? Low retention levels tend to create a systemic problem for rural school districts. I know I'm going to say this and I will come back with better data. I worked with superintendents of HR today at our monthly meeting. Everybody is experiencing that. And I know we all say that. And I talked to the superintendents about that as well. Those in the HR field in all of our districts, even those that are giving, $20,000, $30,000 raises, $10,000 sign-on bonuses, all these great numbers, they're all giving them out, but they're all experiencing the same thing. Twin Rivers has 15 teachers that are currently being covered by subs because they don't have teachers for the classroom. So they too are struggling with retention, and they just gave a 9.16 teacher raise. So it's not just all about, it's not all about money. It's about the variety of things we just talked about. Low retention levels lead to hiring staff that can oftentimes be unprepared. Last year, as you know, one of the things that I was charged with, the year prior, we had some serious misassignments with CalSAS and credentialing. That was one of the things we had to tighten up this last year. So I'm finishing that up and I'll be able to let you know where we land. So far, I have no misassignments and we have no exceptions. So, but we're still going through data. So that can happen when we're hiring unprepared teachers. Those are interns, intern credentials, permits or waivers. Those are local assignment options. Those are Ed Code board assignments that, so you come in and say, I have 20 units of math and you need a math teacher. I have 20 units. We do a local assignment option for Ed Code 44508, and then you approve it and that person teaches math. We don't have any of those this year. So we've done really better. The past couple of years, we had several of those. And that does mean that they're not highly qualified, by the way. So if you're not fully credentialed or you're under one of those, that does mean you're not fully qualified. So regarding the hiring, we're hiring new teachers to the profession. And because we're doing that, they're in preliminary status. They go through the induction program. It's $2,000 per year for 2 years, a total of $4,000. We pay that. So that's a wonderful incentive for teachers. A lot of districts do not pay induction fees for their teachers. They have to pay them for themselves. And we do that for our admins who go through induction here. We've done that for several admins who have gotten their credential. We've assisted and paid for half of their credential. So I think that's an incentive. I think that's a perk. It's not a lot of money, but if you noticed, it can cost up to about 40. We're down this year, 20,000. We were up the year before. We had roughly about $60,000 in induction fees, which means a majority of our teachers were not fully prepared. So we're screening harder and recruiting faster and putting them through faster.
So I'm sorry, just to clarify. Hire a teacher, think they were a teacher, but they weren't fully qualified, and so we paid the difference.
So
Sorry.
yes, so unfortunately, when you are small and rural, and you're trying to be competitive, our average salary is right around 80,000. You tend to bring in teachers who are not fully prepared. So this year we have 6 that are fresh out of school. They have a preliminary credential, but they still need 2 years of induction in order to get a clear credential.
Gotcha.
Right. So that is where the induction fees come from.
Okay.
And the
then
mentor fees.
we're also paying for teachers that want to become admin. This is Trustee Ross. I apologize.
Yes. So if we have, we've done that for 3 previous, 1 current and 2 previous principals.
Okay. Thank you.
So why are they going? Some of the reasons that teachers are leaving, and this is through interviews conducted with teachers who are walking out. We do exit interviews, and we've been very successful with that. This is also according to edsource.org, where they have a lot of interesting data that is substantiated. So I try to always find a second source. Teacher burnout, wages, morale, and other opportunities. 68 of teachers polled in 2022 find teaching exhausting. So as we know, there's a lot of changes in legislation for teachers. It puts extra burden on teachers. It's not the same as when we were kids. We're doing a lot more in the classroom with behavior, working with families, working with parents in stress, working with children in stress. We have a lot of mental health going on in schools. So that plays to a lot of burnout for teachers. Classified staff, I wanted to touch on that. We've made a serious shift and turnaround. So it's very appreciative to CSEA and to the board and to the negotiating team. Heather really worked on changing the way the salary schedule was laid out, and we've moved a lot of our lower classification, which are our most highest needed, which were our paraprofessional and special education, and our kitchen staff up 10 rows. We're actually competing, which is it's kind of funny. I was really pleased because we took 2 Bowman employees to say that. Sorry, Bowman. But we're becoming more competitive for wages, and that is really good because we're getting really good. I would say probably 10 to 15 applicants at a time that are all experienced in coming with prior backgrounds. And we really need that in special education. That's extremely critical when you're working one-on-one and or with students. But job dissatisfaction does remain. We do have quite a few classifieds that answered the call to the survey, and morale was still one of their biggest issues. What does this cost us? So in quantifying the cost of an employee, it's approximately $7,500 in cost to hire a new employee. And that is manpower. That is any advertising. That is manpower for all admins. So everyone who's involved, we kind of quantified those costs in there. Fees for credentialing, fees for DOJ, for FBI, POPs, physicals, all of those items that take into bringing in an employee. It's roughly between 18 to 26 hours to bring in an employee, because we also have to do background checks, we have to do vetting, we have to do reference checks. So there's quite a bit of process. So the average California teacher is about 9,000. So we're roughly about 75. So you can see if we've lost 60, that's can be a devastating hit. And typically turnaround is costly. It is in the employees where budget tends to hit. Everybody knows that it's in personnel costs. So who do we ask to find out why people are leaving? We find out by the employee. So something that's new here that our previous superintendent put into place, and I believe it was in a request by the board, was that we have exit interviews. Sometimes they're really good. Sometimes they're not very helpful. You really have to work with employees to gain their trust, to sit and have open conversations with you, to just really let it all hang out. I have a good rapport in my time here with employees. And so they know that what we say in that door and then that room is between us, but they also know that I'm going to use the data that we're talking about in order to bring it out to AUSD employees and the board so that you can kind of understand where that's coming from. So this was some of the responses. After 60, the 4 that left, I got 28 responses.
Would you move forward in the presentation, please? Thank you.
Thank you. Oops. Pay is the number 1 reason. Morale, number 2. Prior administration. Concerns about fiscal oversight. Not enough teacher input. School board members. Job burnout. So much more is expected with so little no pay or increases. Lack of respect by parents. Student discipline or lack of discipline at the school sites. So when I put these down this way because I didn't want to put the specifics in because that's not helpful. But number 1 for pay and morale. Typically employees don't focus on payroll if they have a better morale of where they're working. It's when they start feeling undervalued and underappreciated. That was the highlight of most of the people that walked in, is they really didn't feel valued. They really don't feel listened to. They feel passed over. And that is not new to AUSD. That is not something that is new to this board or to this administration. That is something that we have been experiencing since I've been here. And so that's one of the things that we'll talk about later on. This is going to be the year of the employee. So there'll be future shout outs about the things that Michelle and I are going to be doing and working with employees. So how did we rank? So we have in the exit form a ranking by these subjects of where people are feeling satisfied or dissatisfied. School board was split down the middle. Some satisfied, some dissatisfied. Superintendent, it's where we're at. They appreciate our current administration and where we're going. We're setting new goals and new ways of communication. They see that happening. Human resources, satisfied. Benefits and payroll, I was a little miffed at first and then I kept reading. But there was really because the benefit costs are increasing and we're not catching up to it. So a lot of people who are new that I bring in and we do benefit enrollment, it's kind of eye-opening that a family would be putting out almost $1,600 even for a $1,500 deductible plan. That is the cost of their insurance.
What frequency?
Monthly.
$1,600 a month.
Monthly.
Okay. Wow.
Yeah. And that's at a cap that's already at 13.9. So that can be very That can be very daunting. So a lot of times you see dad is carrying the kids, mom is carrying her own, or they're working out some sort of strategy. But benefits has been really interesting. If they waive, we still have to pay a cost for their seat. The cost is $3,600 a year. That is to keep our pool solid, because we are in a JPA, so we always have a placeholder there. So we do have quite a few people who are on waivers. Most families don't take our plans because they are so costly.
And we still pay 3,600.
We do still pay
Year,
this 36, the
even if they
3,600. If they're to pay the 3,600 and they're eligible for benefits. And that is through Schools Insurance Group. That's because we have to keep our pool as active. So paying the waiver keeps our pool numbers high. Our participation numbers high. IT department, very helpful, satisfied. Dave was magnanimous in all the surveys. Student services, satisfied. Learning support service says it's satisfied. Teaching and learning department satisfied. There were some concerns about PD, but overall, it was more of an appreciation than it was a dislike. Teachers would like more input. So Michelle and I have been talking about that. Okay, so where are we now? We heard it, and really now what? That's kind of where we're at. So Michelle and I talked actually way before this year even started. We kind of had a come to Jesus meeting as to where we wanted to go and what we wanted to do with employees, because we all know that the last year has been fairly divisive. There's been some issues. And how can we turn the ship? How can we bring it around? What can we do? But we need to know what the problem is. So it really is, there's no complex and simple solution. It's multiple layers of peeling back issues and addressing them collectively to make change, not lip service. That was the one thing that I was told multiple times by multiple employees. They were tired of lip service. If you can't give it to us, don't promise it. I'm a firm believer in that. If I can't fix it, I'm not going to tell you I can. And so honest dialogue. This is not done by a superintendent. So I did have this conversation and she appreciated that. And she said, put it in your slide. A superintendent cannot fix this. A school board cannot fix this. A school board member cannot fix this. CBOs, individuals, AUTA, CSEA, we cannot do this alone. We must do this collectively and see ourselves as one united AUSD. We are Auburn Union School District. We have 3 schools. We have 221 staff, parents, teachers, community. We are all affected by the decisions that are made, and we should all be involved in the process of healing and rebuilding. So Superintendent Garcia and I put together a survey. It's called Building Relationships. Some of you board members may have seen it and you may have responded to it. It's an anonymous survey that went out to all employees. We've had now 60 responses, which is really good because some of our surveys have been like 10, 15, 20. I did have a talk with a couple of our governing chairs for our unions to just please get that out there. Please get the word out there that we do want to hear what they have to say. We knew it would be hard, but that's okay. We knew it would be difficult to hear some of the things that we have to hear. And we're going to say some things back that are difficult to employees that they're not going to want to hear because there's not going to be things that we can change. We are a district in declining enrollment. We are just a district in fiscal crisis. We won't probably ever see a 10% increase. We're not like those districts, as I always like to say. But that doesn't mean that we can't right the ship and deliver a better outcome for employees. First, to realize that they are extremely valued. I value every employee here. And they all have a purpose and they've all been doing it for many years. And we want to retain our new teachers that we're bringing in. And we want to respect those who have already invested, and we call them senior teachers. Our mentor teachers, that's what I call a senior teacher, is a mentor teacher. If you've been here for 20 plus years, you're a mentor teacher. And this is where our new teachers need you the most. And we need you the most to help us understand how to write it. So that really was the scope of the presentation. And just to let you know that we are starting next week and going out to our first school. We're going to be presenting at Auburn Elementary first, where that's where the most need is right now that we've been informed of. We're going to start having conversations there. It's Michelle calls it a road show, but really what it is it's really just conversation. We want people to feel heard and listen to and see what it is that we can do and bring that information back. So we know this is not just a few conversations. This can be a whole long year project to maybe establish new rules of engagement. I always like to say that way, new rules of engagement. How are we going to interact in relationships with our employees and our unions, and where we're going to go and what we're going to do? So that is it.
Yeah, thank you.
Anybody have any questions?
It's fine.
Okay,
Thank you.
you're welcome.
I do want to say thank you so much, Michelle, because we've been asking for this information for a really long time. And it's kind of that white elephant in the room that no one wants to talk about, but we know that it's going on. And so it's really nice to have this brought to our attention so that we can really, really get a perspective on what's happening with our district. Even if it's happening everywhere, this is our district. So I want to just thank you again and appreciate your time doing that.
All right. And on to 7B, the child nutrition presentation.
So we have Nicole DeGraff here. She's going to present how child nutrition is working within our schools.
Would you like a chair? We could.
No, I don't. If I sit and he's crushing me and then it get hot, then I want to pass out. So if I stand, it's better. Okay. No, that's why I stood. So just push the way forward. I push it out. Okay. Back. Well, go back. Can you go to the start? Oh, there we go. Okay. Well, I'm Nicole. You guys know me. Thank you for having me. I'm doing child nutrition, and it's our pleasure to serve our students and everybody. We're going to start off with the KIT grant funds. So we were allotted some funds from a grant that we had applied for. Larissa Clark, the previous director, had applied for it. Last year, we got allocated about $140,000. We spent a lot of it, but not all of it. They also did a second allocation of another $140,000 this year. So part of this is that last year we got it, but whatever was left over, we can't move it over to this year. What we spent it on is we're done. And then we have another $140,000 for this year. All the funds are designated. So that grant is specific to certain things such as equipment, new equipment, training, anything for employees, infrastructure, anything in that area. We can't use it for food. We can't use it, for missing, with menus or anything like that. But we can use it for like our POS programs, our Titan programs, anything in that area. All of this stuff can be used for. So some of the things that we got in order to help our kitchens, we got every kitchen end up getting invited mixes, immersion blenders, knives, knife sharpeners, step stools, ladders, what we call stanchions or poles of ropes for the middle school. Ours were a little bit old and dilapidated. Pizza cutters, peelers, and we're working on getting an oven for Skyridge. I was hoping to have it in at the beginning of the year, but that's still going on. Infrastructure, we were able to go ahead and do our freezers and walk-ins. The freezer and walk-in at Auburn L, it was just a subfloor. So we were able to go ahead and put in a completely new floor into there, which was really awesome. So now there's a non-slip floor and we can all feel safe. EV Kane was having some freezer issues since I've been there for 10 years. I was causing freezer issues on the bottom where the walk-in would actually freeze in the corner, cause water and condensation. And then we also got noted by the health department this year, and they were able to come and seal everything and make it towards where it's now ready to use, and we don't have those issues. So that was actually one of the bigger projects. And then Skyridge just had a small repair in the left-hand corner, and it went really well. So it was nice to get all those repaired and have confidence in the fact that our equipment is good to go. Training. We have meetings once a month. If they're team meetings, they're team training. We go through anything from interpersonal communication of how we're going to talk to each other, to the staff, to teachers, to students, to parents, trying to get the same message and everybody on the same page. We start the new school year with 1 week of training, the whole week before school, because the orientation time isn't enough time. There's like 4 hours for us to do, and we have kitchens to open, and that takes more of our time than anything. So we did what we call Titan, or our POS system. We got it right before COVID happened. COVID happened, and then we didn't have to use computers. So we didn't use computers for like 2 or 3 years. So they got trained on what we call Titan, our POS.
Pardon me, which stands for point of service?
Point of sale.
Oh, point of
service.
sale. Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you.
And then we have what's called Healthy Pro. Healthy Pro is a meal planning computer program. What happens is it allows us to make sure that our menus that we're creating are compliant with the state, right? That way, whatever we're serving, we know 100% is compliant. It's tracking how many meals we're serving, that the meal itself is actually compliant, and that if we're missing something, we can substitute something in, but what can we substitute in that will still meet that grain that we need, that fruit, whatever it is. It's one of those really great tools. So they had to do a lot of training on that one for the leads, because it is such an important tool for us this year. So surplus, last year I came to you guys with a big whole list of surplus. I'm very excited to tell you we made about $33,000 from it. It's been very awesome. I know it's like, oh man, we're getting rid of stuff for scratch cooking. It's all equipment that honestly we hadn't used in over a decade. It's really hard, especially with our schools losing enrollment, to have such nice equipment but not be able to use it. So that's where some of the money went to. Also, like if we didn't use kit funds, we were also able to use the surplus money. All the kettles went. We had 2 kettles that we got rid of. We had about 5 different Hobarts, even a broken one, and it for about $500. So we had a broken down van, and it sold for 17 grand. So all the stuff that we had that was in extreme excess, if we're not using it and we can't fit it into our schools and we can't save it for a backup, we surplused it as much as we could just to have something fresh to start with. We bought new knives. Yes, we had knives, but some of them are just, they're kind of cruel with it and beat them pretty well. So it was time for an upgrade and update on those. Let's see. Our budget this year to start off with is in the black, which I'm very thankful for. We're starting off with about $700,000, which is a huge deal for us. We're very excited. We weren't expecting that much. We were expecting maybe a couple thousand. So when I was told that we got $700,000, I was like, yes, all this money, most of this budget money is actually from reimbursement from meals. So this is not your grant. This doesn't include your kit funds, your grant funds. This does not include the surplus money. Might include 30,000 of the surplus. Yeah. And then also we cleaned up Escape in order to, our Escape is how we do our ordering. We cleaned that up to see how much we actually had, and it saved us almost 50 grand. So, yeah. Okay. We went over team training a little bit. On top of learning all of the computer programs, we also did equipment training for all the new equipment we got to make sure everybody knew how to use a Vitamix properly so they don't destroy it the first time they use it. Same thing with the immersion blenders. Everything was industrial, so I wanted to make sure that they had a comprehensive understanding. Dishwashers, everything they're supposed to already know. Most of them do, but some of them were a little bit not as comfortable. And then also things like Google, since Google's one of our main communications. I was like, you really guys need to learn this better so we can all communicate better. So last year, by the end of the year, or by the beginning of the school year, I was able to get all the menus completed for the whole school year. Specifically because I knew I'd be out for a couple months. So the good thing is that it makes us compliant. All of our menus are compliant. They're also for sure available online right now, and you can translate them into like 20 or 30 different languages, including Spanish. You can also click on the buttons. It can give you a list of ingredients and also the nutritional facts that you need. So we're very excited to be meeting all these things. So like when we get audited, say probably next year, these are the records they're going to look at. This is stuff that they go, well, how come you didn't meet this? Or, wow, you're actually meeting all the stuff that we need you to meet. So for the start of the school year, we went over Titan. There was the first day. Okay, so the first day there were no students in Titan, so it was really hard to get Titan started. So we had to go ahead and just do clickers, and then we were able to get Titan and Aries talking again, so that was good. Titan is currently having some issues again. We're working through it. We don't want to stop using Titan because of the issues, in the sense of we need it in order to be compliant. And we're just going to continue so we get better at the process, and we're updating the process too as we go.
So Titan is the system that tracks if you
point of
have like
sale.
an account or if you
Right.
have a balance.
Yeah, it tracks all the students. So if they come up and get a meal, we just put in there, they just get a meal. It's free. It's totally reimbursable. The middle school's a little bit different. They do have snacks that they can purchase. So they have cookies, slushies, and chips. So that helps a lot more over there. For the elementary schools, it also keeps them from double dipping. We have a lot of kids, especially at EVK, who will go to every line or multiple lines to get meals or come back or something. And that we also have to look out for. We have to show that we have a process in play that is trying to keep that from happening. So it's a very good program to have. It can be. We're looking at Auburn Elementary getting scanners. So that way the process can go a little bit faster. We have the scanners. It's just a little bit more process going. We started off the school year a little bit short-staffed than I thought, and we've become a little bit more short-staffed since then. We have 3 open positions, correct? I have 2 kitchen positions and a warehouse delivery driver position currently open. So we are hopefully going to get those. We've had some people out sick. We've had things happen, but my crew's been overcoming. We have 2 subs currently helping mainly at Auburn Elementary because that's where the biggest need is at. But the staff have been the team have been doing a really nice job. There are struggles still with Auburn Elementary, and we're getting things through. We're serving about 350 to 400 students at Auburn Elementary alone. The kitchen is bigger than Rock Creek, but it's still smaller than EVK, and they only have 2 serving lines. My team is working super hard. They're pushing as hard as they can, and they're doing a great job. And the really cool thing was all the staff from Auburn L really supported us. They've been helping us with name cards or, making sure their kids know their names and getting them through. So we've been really blessed to have that happen, and got them all name tags for now. And then we're working on IDs. So yeah, we are very thankful that they've been so supportive. And when I made a mistake of miscommunication and then emailed them and said, I am so sorry, they were like, thank you for saying something. That really helped. So going forward, we'll make sure that we're communicating properly and including all the staff. The whole team, we've all been pulling together to get every student fed a breakfast meal and a lunch meal. There have been struggles and stresses along the way. However, we continue to push through. The child nutrition team is committed to serving all the students nutritious meals. The district and staff have been very supportive, and we are very thankful for their effort to help us be better. It's been nice this year. In the past, we've had different terms used like bottom feeders or bottom dwellers for our staff, like whether it's us saying it or somebody else. And this year, I feel like there's been more support from admin and from just even like AE staff going, yeah, let us help you. Like, we're here to help you. Hey guys, we're really sorry. We're going to push through too and overcome this mountain. And it's been really neat to feel like we've had more support, more communication, and trying to build things. We all have things that we're going through, and we're all trying to work through it together. So things to look forward to next. We're working on the team to get everybody Serve Safe qualified. I've had one who needed to pass, she passed, and I have a couple others that we're still waiting on, but we're trying to get them qualified before October and also before I leave. I'm a proctor for SurfSafe, so I'm able to allow them to take the test and be able to be there and watch them. So it makes it easier process. Once I leave, they have to do it online, and it's a grueling process. A little bit different, same test, but trying to get the proctor on the video cameras, they're a lot more strict, and they're very having to do a lot of things and hook it up. We're hoping in once we start spaghetti, which will be November through January, that'll all be made quick scratch. That's always been a plan. I think EV Kane Middle School has like pozole. That's always made from scratch. January to June, child nutrition will focus on making 2 entrees for the students to test out and see if we can add them to the menu for the new school year. The 2 menu items would be like a burrito bowl. Our lead over at EV Kane, Coral Barrios. That was one of her ideas to say, well, we have all the stuff, in the kitchen. Can we make something like this? Absolutely. Let's go ahead and give it a try. We think it would be something that'd be good. The other one at the bottom is pita chicken bacon ranch wrap. Those ingredients we need to look for and find because bacon's a little bit expensive. And then the pita wrap I don't have, but I want to see if we can get it. We saw it actually online on Facebook. A school was doing it and we were like, that looks delicious. Kids would love that. So we would like to be able to get that out next year. And then next we'll work on quesadillas and grilled cheese being made from scratch too. I know schools have been successful with it and just making sure they have flavor and get it done. It's really about team training and getting it out there and making sure the product is available. Sometimes we just can't get the product. Sometimes I can't get tortillas. Sometimes I can't get the same cheese. Sometimes I can't get bread and sometimes I can. So we'll have to cost it out and make sure we can do that. We're still working on the other oven at Skyridge. It's not a pressing matter. It's they're still doing okay with the rotation of things. Their enrollment didn't go up too drastically, but with that kettle out, we have the space for it and it would be helpful. So our issue is the doorway. My doorways are only 33 inches wide, and apparently most ovens are about 34 to 38 inches wide. And which is funny because I know I got an oven in Kane once and it worked just fine. And I'm like, I just want somebody to come out and help me because I know we can get an oven in here. So we're doing that and looking for quotes and finding a company who will work with us. So that's been kind of a grueling process. We're looking into a better inventory program for next school year. We currently have what's called Escape and the whole school district uses it. But for inventory for food service, it's not very compatible for us. It doesn't really track our budget well enough. You think about Amazon or, warehouses like that where they can scan it in and scan it out. Well, we're doing everything by hand. And then if you don't push certain buttons or people aren't doing a certain step, it's a multi-layered step, multifaceted, and it's really just not efficient for food service. Titan does have an inventory system. We're looking into seeing if their inventory system will work for us to where we can, put a sticker on it, scan it in. And then as it goes out, it gets scanned out. So all of our inventory is the same. Otherwise, our inventory gets thrown off. And if we don't do it every break, then our budget says one thing, but it's really a different budget. So it's just not reading properly for us. This way it can be more consistent, and day by day and order by order, it should be pretty well consistent on it.
Excuse me. About how much time a day do you think your staff are working on their inventory?
You mean like individual schools so they order at least once a week and they order 2 weeks ahead. So generally I created a spot for them to actually take the inventory. It can take about an hour to do all of that. And then on top of that, ordering. So it takes another 30 to 45 minutes. It depends on the school site too. Sometimes once you get in the rotation of things, you can kind of know where you're at with everything. Healthy Pro is really good because it actually helps forecast what you will need for the next cycle and stuff. But getting down after the beginning of the school year can take a lot more time because not only are they doing Escape, but now they're also doing produce. So they're all ordering their own produce. They're all ordering their own milk. And Auburn L is a whole new beast. So we're trying to figure out how much do we have to order. The first 2 weeks, we were like, wow, we went through a lot. Like, she's like, I'm almost out and I just got this milk and I ordered a lot. So we're constantly looking at inventory. We're constantly looking at things. It's really important because of dates. Last year, I know we kind of had in the years prior things that got thrown out and had waste. And that's really something we're trying to focus on, that we don't have that much waste. Not because of dates. We might have waste because, somebody ordered 30 pizza pockets, but we need 35 just in case, and there's 2 left over. That waste is an acceptable waste. What we don't want is to get short dated, meaning that we get a product in and it expires the next day. That doesn't help us at all. We've had a little bit of that with how purveyors are, but then we also have things sitting, and sometimes people aren't paying attention or things aren't getting rotated and it's expiring, and that really hurts your budget too. So we're trying to focus on making sure that everybody has an eye on the dates and everybody has an eye on what they're ordering, so that way it's getting rotated properly. So yeah, they do spend a lot of time. The lead 2s usually are the ones who have more eyes on and hands on to make sure they're ordering properly. But just for Escape, they're doing about 2 hours.
Thank you.
You're welcome. And I think that's it. Any other questions? Yeah.
Trustee Ross, I got too comfortable. How close are we from moving away from the plastic? Like how you said, we order 2 weeks in advance. That means we're probably getting a little more things in cans instead of off of I guess they are off a tree, but
So, okay, that's a good question. So, not only do we have a KIT grant, but we also have other grants that we got. So we have what's an LSF grant, which allows us to order more organic and pay specifically for that food. We got a little over $14,000. So we'll be using that for all of our fresh produce. We're working more with locally. We have the hub that we're working with. There's Pisco Farms in Newcastle, and they do supply all of our mandarins during the season. Hoping for a good season, but I know there was a lot of rain this year, so we'll see how that happens. I have a connection with the hub, and she works. So the hub does the work that instead of for me going to each farmer, she goes to each farmer and she'll tell me, or I can say, hey, I want peaches for all of my schools. I have 1,500 students. What can you supply me with for the next 3 weeks? And she'll go find that farmer or work on building those relationships so we can build those. So that's what I'm working on. I'm building those and just working with local farmers and trying to get that system in play. We just got it all printed off because it is very specific about what you can and cannot use it for. It's for some milk and some other things.
right.
And then we also get money from the USDA. We get allocated a certain amount, and we put about, I think I put about 12,000 towards what we call DoD, Department of Defense, fresh fruits and vegetables, and some of it organic. So every week we're literally getting, whether it be DoD or general produce right now. And then when seasons come, the other fruit, every week we're constantly getting fresh stuff. And we're trying to get new stuff. If they have plums, I'm like, those are so delicious.
They are.
Anything in season, I gave my whole crew a whole child nutrition manual that helped with knowing your seasonality, just a basic layout, how we order this, who we order from. Once the money runs out from DoD, we go straight to general produce. I was lucky enough to go to a conference this summer with general produce and see the that are actually providing for us meals in locally, Yuba City, Sacramento. And it was really wonderful. It was wonderful to see how they prepackage our food, what standards they have, how it happens, and how it gets to us and how quickly they really package and get things to us within about a day. So it's really neat of how quickly they turn over and what we're supporting.
That's amazing. Thank you for doing that. And then my second question is, I know that we have like this somehow turn of events with our children where there's more lactose intolerant children than there ever have been. And I know last year was an issue, like if you don't grab your milk, you can't get your food. Have we resolved that or worked anything out with that?
So none of the students are required to grab a milk.
Okay.
Just to let you know, breakfast is either 2 fruits and an entree or a fruit, a milk, and an entree. They just have to have 3 components. Okay. And then lunch is 3 components too, but most of our entrees are 2 components, meaning it's usually a grain and a meat. And then they're required to grab a fruit or a vegetable. A milk is optional for them. Are there other options? Yes. I know I've talked to one of our contractors about, okay, what about something like an oat milk or soy milk? You also have soy issues, so there's always those issues. So yeah, I know Heather and I have definitely talked about looking at having that possibility of, can we get a secondary type of milk? But that being said, those who are lactose intolerant or have milk allergies, they would be the only one who'd have access to it. And they would just have to let us know. At the moment, the only other thing we offer is juice. Usually most of the time we have that available. Otherwise it's water. But yeah, absolutely. We're trying to look into everything with, how can we be more accommodating and at the same time how much can we be accommodating? I had our nurse today ask me about peanut butter sandwiches. She goes, can we do sunflower butter sandwiches? I just asked one of my contractors today and said, hey, do we have that available to us? Some schools don't, some schools do. It just depends on our region, and it depends on who my purveyors. I have Gold Star and Cisco, and if they have it available, we can look into rotating out. So we're trying to get some more of those built up.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
This is Trustee Brickler. One thing is I just really appreciate hearing about the complexity of the job that you do and all of the challenges that you're working through, and hearing about the inventory management and just the compliance piece with all the nutrition. So thank you for taking the time to keep us informed about it's just such a heavily regulated field that we work in, and I think especially child nutrition. So I guess I wanted you presented like such helpful information. I don't think it made it onto the board packet. The presentation that I had reviewed is a totally separate one that talks about pizza parties and things like that.
Oh.
So would it be possible to update just so anyone in the public who wants
Yeah,
to see
sure,
it can get
absolutely.
the other information?
Absolutely. So
I think I probably owe you $1 because I was at the Auburnell cafeteria recently, and sometimes kids would come up to me and they would say, can I get a milk? And I thought they meant like, can I get up? And I was probably like allowing children to get milk who
So
hadn't paid for it.
during
So
lunch, the best
I
thing
know.
to tell them. So during lunch, if a student wants a milk and they brought their own, the best thing to tell them is they need to grab a fruit and a vegetable with that milk. That's 3 components that creates a complete reimbursable meal for us. We can absolutely do it that way. They still have to come up and go through the system, but that would be the best. I can set up an account. I was thinking about, I'm going to set up an account that says CN to have some money on it towards where we can also plug those in. But yeah,
I've got some extra money in Titan. I'll transfer
No,
to you.
it's okay. Okay, so yeah, I did have another slide that we had presented to the principals and SOs and SAW. So pizza parties. We do reimbursable pizza parties in the classroom. We are more than happy to do it for you. Here's the thing, we need a 2 weeks notice, 2 weeks like ahead of time, meaning 2 full weeks. So if yours is, on the 15th, I need the 1st. Because it takes even longer than that. Because if we get it in on that Monday, we order it and it comes in sometimes either that week or the next week, and then we also have to deliver it. So it would be that 3rd week where you'd have that party. And it helps us with inventory. If you guys want to work with Domino's, and we'd love to, we need 3 weeks though, just because when they give us pizza, they're making about 50 pizzas right now just for Auburn L alone, and another 20 for Skyridge, and then another 25 to 30 for EV Kane. And they also supply Placer High School. So it's really important that we have the stuff in the warehouse. Sometimes we do. Sometimes we happen to have an extra case of something, or we're able to supply that, but it's not always guaranteed. And I'd rather just have that 2 weeks notice. We supply the fruit, the vegetable, the milk, and the pizza. This is a complete reimbursable meal. And then all we need is a list of their student names so we can put them in our system. If anybody ends up going outside of that, it needs to be after our lunch is served. It cannot compete with our lunch. That's super important because we prepare for the counts, the numbers that we get. And if somebody does something like a lunch during lunch, then now our waste is twice as much as what it normally would be because somebody else is feeding the students. For snacks and things, there are things that can be considered compliant. We have a wellness policy. We have one that has been approved a few years ago. It hasn't, the committee is still being worked on because we're trying to get it out there. There's been a lot on the plate lately. It's not fallen by the wayside. We are trying to get it up this school year to make sure we are compliant. But one of the things is the snacks. USDA and the state policy requires that they are all smart snack approved. So when I say we sell items at EV Kane, those are all smart snack items. Our slushies are 100% juice. Our cookies are 51% whole grain. Our chips meet a certain criteria. There was a list on USDA years ago. When I went to go look it up, I couldn't find it. Their main thing is that sugar intake and salt intake, they do have a calculator on there, and we do have products that we can get. I'm looking into like donuts. I'm looking into what else do they have? Cookies, even more than what EV Kane has. Cold Star is offering like a pumpkin cookie, and I was like, hey, let's get some for the whole school. During that meal, we're going to send out a cookie, so it's compliant towards where I can make it part of the meal. So we are looking into those things. I was I have people asking for cupcakes. Unfortunately, I found out that they discontinued the whole grain one or the partial grain. So I'm trying to connect with somebody to find that because it's been a very big challenge. The other thing is that anything you bring to school cannot be homemade. They're concerned about ingredients that people don't know their ingredients well enough, so you can get kids really, really sick. So please don't do homemade. If we're going to do something, it needs to be store bought. So we have a list of all the ingredients and all the kids are being taken care of. And we also need to make sure we're talking to the nurses to make sure none of those students have any allergies. And again, it needs to be served after our meals because it competes with their meals. So
Yeah, I was just going to say, I have heard from some parents, I think that even though we've been talking about the wellness policy for some time, that there's still a lot of education that's needed
Yep.
because there's still kind of these traditions of bringing cupcakes on birthdays and things like that. So I know there's been some communication, but it feels like we need a lot more follow-up so people kind of understand that it's about safety and avoiding allergens. And
yeah,
also, I mean, I think even like from the PTC perspective, we do things like popsicles with the principal. And I remember when I had to buy them one time, trying to be mindful of like, are these 100% fruit juice? Because I think any of those events are supposed to be.
so anything that
Compliant?
happens during the school time, meaning from midnight to 30 minutes after the school day. So if they get out 2:30, at 3 o'clock, you guys are welcome to serve whatever you'd like. You can serve. You're not under the school time or regulations at that point. So if there's a basketball game at 3:30 and they're selling candy bars, they're absolutely allowed to. It doesn't affect us. It's during school hours that we have to be cognizant of things. Getting popsicles through us and storing them. It is. We do have a booklet that we're trying to finish putting together and making sure it's updated because they do update it once in a while. And then part of having a committee will be that this information will go out to the families and that you guys can understand it better. It's just been kind of project after project we're trying to kill. And we do want you guys to know that we're supporting you. And that's why I'm trying to find all those little nuances that are easier for us to order and make sure I have that connection. It's just been a little bit harder with a different contract that we have and just going, okay, so now I need you to get this for me. She's like, oh, we can't do that. I'm like, oh, wait, I see this. Wait, that's different. So yes, and like you said, it's a lot different in today's world than it was 20 years ago. We didn't have 30 kids who had peanut allergies. A new allergy this year is also sesame. So they just added that as like the 9th allergy is sesame allergy. So we're looking at all the possibilities of, kids getting sick and we don't want to kill any students. We don't want to hurt anybody. And how do we avoid that? And what's the best thing to do? So absolutely, I agree. And it's something that we're definitely working towards of making sure everybody understands food allergies and how serious it is in today's world compared to what it used to be.
Thank you.
Can I just ask, because it says you will, trustee Ross, like you'll do donuts with dudes and muffins for moms, but what's the difference of a parent bringing in a donut for a child's birthday party and you bringing in donuts?
So my donuts are compliant with the state.
Okay.
So they're 51% whole grain and their sugar is a lot less. So like if you look at our cereals, we get Cinnamon Toast Crunch and Cocoa Puffs. Really great, right? You can get the same thing in the store. It is not the same product.
Oh, interesting.
It is the same brand and the same people make it, but they make it with less sugar for schools, right? So if you go and
What?
purchase cereal and you go and purchase Cocoa Puffs, yeah, it's the same thing. But if you look at your sugar content, it's going to be a lot different because they specifically make it for us. So these donuts may look slightly different or may not be as beautiful, but they're going to be compliant with what we do. And then also we can create a reimbursable meal with it. So we're safe. We can have that. It's free for the students. The parents would have to pay, but that way we're being reimbursed for it. They get a free meal. The school doesn't have to pay a whole bunch of extra money to make sure they have all this. And then also like muffins, right now we're kind of stuck with the chocolate chip muffins, but we have in the past gotten banana muffins or blueberry muffins. So we can get those things. It's just sometimes we have to order ahead of time. And they're all compliant. They're all 51% whole grain.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
Any other questions? All right, great. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
All right, and we are moving on to item 8, and that's public comment for any items not on today's agenda.
We do have one public comment,
Okay.
Monica Peak.
I'm good. Hello, my name is Monica Peak. I'm a teacher at Rock Creek. Oh, I'm sorry, Auburn Elementary. Rock Creek was closed. I'm still trying to get past that. I wanted to talk today about the school climate at Auburn Elementary, where I'm now teaching TK. I have a full class. Pretty difficult this year. I have a lot of anybody wild. I have a minimum of 2 to 3 parties every day. We've had blood noses on. Thankfully, he does. We are overcrowded. Our is going out to lunch duty every day, which is not. Show up for lunch duty, and she came into to do lunch duty today. So that last time with me, with my really, really, really busy class, so that she can have her lunch break. We went home earlier this week and took a 4-hour nap. Just saying. We are adjusting to the overcrowding. We have way too many kids on our campus. Our classrooms are full. Last week, called for a note to be sent to all the parents. The teachers had no idea what was going on. We were supposed to know so that we would tell the parents, which I understand. And it's really not our business, but when we're dealing with our kids and we have parents coming at us, pretty important for us to know something so we can tell the parents.
A little bit.
I'm sorry.
Thank you.
Maybe I need to speak into the microphone. Is that better? Thank you. We're still reeling from all the trauma of being combined from 3 schools. We had 2 schools closed down, both Rock Creek and Alta Vista. It's been very difficult adjustment for not only the students and the families, but the teachers as well. Hence the overcrowding. We have more kids at Auburn Elementary right now than we have at EVK in our middle school. So that's pretty shocking considering that we have, I think, Clerk Brickler told me there's room for 1,200 kids at at EVK. And we have over 550 at Auburn Elementary right now. We are packed.
Thank
It was
you.
very enlightening.
Thank
Some
you,
of
Ms.
the-
Peak, but your time is up.
Oh, okay. Thank you.
Thank you. And is there any additional public comment? Okay. Moving on to item 9A, with AUTA's comments.
Good evening, President Holt, Board of Trustees, and Superintendent Garcia. First, I'm happy to announce that AUTA was able to participate in Kids Palooza, and it was amazing that we got to give back to the community. It was really nice seeing lots of families and lots of kids happy. Moving on, I attended the budget workshop last week, and it seems that in order to understand what the families in Auburn are needing, you need to spend time talking with them and listening to their concerns. A great idea was shared at the meeting to attend PTC meetings and actually be on school sites. I can tell you being on a school site gives you a lot of clarity as to the things that are working well and the things that need to be changed, like the lack of supervision at EVK and all of the school sites, the need for custodial staff at all of the school sites, the use of prep time at EVK to cover classes. These are all things that are currently happening at all of our school sites. How and when will things get better? Our teachers are overworked, exhausted, and are still told to do more. We are only on day 18 right now. We have 52 permanent teachers and 32 probationary teachers. This is a lot of pressure on all the teachers, especially our new teachers. But my question is, why is there such a high turnover rate each year with AUSD teachers? Respectfully, Sarah Liebert, AUTA President.
Thank you. And next is 9B and CSCA.
Good evening. I don't have a speech I've prepared. It was a very busy day. But I just wanted to let you know how things are going. Everyone's kind of getting their feet under them now. We're about 4 weeks into the year. We're very short staffed though with custodial, and grounds keepers are having to cover custodial shifts. So that means the grounds aren't getting done and maintenance isn't gotten to as often as it should be. So that's definitely a concern. And it creates more work for those people that are trying to do 2 or 3 people's jobs because we're so short staffed. So that's a concern I have for the coming year. I don't know the solution to that, but it's something we need to really try to figure out. Paras, we're still down. Paras, we've hired a lot of new ones, but we're still having to contract out to Maxim and use those people, which cost us more money. And that's all I got. Thank you.
Thank you.
All right. And moving to item 10, starting with 10A and the superintendent.
This is Superintendent Lucia Garcia, and I just wanted to let you all know that Christine Mayberry was honored today by the Latino Leadership Council. She received the Quetzal Award, which is an award for, and I'll just tell you what it says on the plaque, advocacy and dedication to our Latino communities in the area of education. And then I also wanted to remind everybody that the resource fair is tomorrow. So please come on out and see, our community partners who are coming. We have about 28 partners coming out. Some of those are our own tables from our own staff. One of those will be HR to recruit. And we have backpacks and water bottles and things to give to our community, our students. We have some school supplies and food. We'll have food and slushies and all the things. So please come on out.
And this is President Holt. I've got a couple of comments here. First, I just want to address some brief housekeeping with the board, kind of about how we do things. Just a reminder for us to not interrupt each other, and then also not to interrupt the speaker. If we're asking questions, please let them finish the answer to the question we've asked them. And then regarding concerns, questions, and comments from the public, we need to make sure we're addressing those to the superintendent. And the superintendent's going to respond to those, delegate somebody else to respond directly to the incident, or otherwise address it, as needs to be done. But we need to make sure that we're sending those directly to the superintendent. Because in our board governance handbook that we adopted, we included language in there about not making special requests of staff. Another point, when we're going to be individually visiting schools or departments in our capacity as board members, according to our governance handbook, we don't have to, but we are strongly encouraged to notify the superintendent that we'll be visiting those sites. So if we could just do that, whether it's a text or an email, if we could let the superintendent know when we'll be visiting a site, just so she's aware. Let's see here. Then I want to touch on, we kind of had 3 notable incidents in the last week that were making the rounds. There was something involving TikTok, a personal medical incident at Auburn, and the issue with a transient after school at Skyridge. So just wanted to touch on kind of each of those briefly and broadly. With this TikTok channel, with alleged cyberbullying, it was brought to the attention of the community and the district and the board. And as I understand it, an investigation is underway. And as a board, we will learn more when that investigation is completed. As we've been informed, TikTok has removed that channel and local law enforcement was contacted. So before this, we had a conversation with Director Peters months ago, and TikTok was already barred from school computers and Chromebooks. So it's not something that is allowed on school resources. And cyberbullying is not only wrong, but it is a crime here in California. So I encourage any students who were personally targeted or parents who are aware that their student was to file a complaint with Principal Mayberry or anonymously through the website. And AUSD's website, we do have an option to file anonymous complaints. We will investigate those, the district will, so please do. Beyond that though, we cannot as a board address that. We can't address the individual points. We need to let the investigation run its course. So that's something that we'll be able to get into. The second point I wanted to briefly touch on in that line is last week, a student at Auburn L did experience a mental health event in the presence of some classmates. And students and staff did respond to the incident appropriately, and it went through the proper channels. I understand that a lot of people, both teachers and the community, wanted to know more. We can't share that information. It's that students and their families' private medical information. It's nobody else's right to know, even though that might have allayed some concerns. I was there the next morning. I know some rumors had gone around, and I spoke with some parents that next day. But we will protect that student's right to privacy just as we would any other student in the district. And so I would ask that every staff member respect that, and every staff member and parent support us in protecting those rights and to help kind of squash any rumors and things that are going around otherwise. So ask for everybody's help for that. And then third, last week at approximately 5:30 p.m. On Wednesday, a member of AUSD staff found a transient in the bathroom on Skyridge campus. That staff member told the individual to leave campus, which they did, and notified the principal, and law enforcement was notified and ultimately made contact with the individual as well. So in that case, school had been out for about 3 hours, but some students were on campus with an after-school program. Student and staff safety is always a top concern. And in this case, school staff identified and reported the trespasser according to protocols and procedures, contacted law enforcement like we hope they would. But to that end, we're constantly reviewing those policies, procedures, and safety protocols at each of the sites. And so that is never something that's done, that's continuous. So hopefully we're going to be learning some lessons from this and seeing how we can improve going forward. Right. Okay. Thank you. And I will turn it over now to any trustee, whoever wants to be next.
Vice President Wedge here. Just want to make a quick comment. So the last board meeting shared some information that Bayside was interested in using EV Kane campus, and I received word on Monday that they held an event at EV Kane. They did a dinner and just time of fellowship there. And I was told about 250 people showed up. So it was well attended. And it's just excited that, different organizations are reaching out and want to use our facilities on the weekend. So I think that'll definitely help out in the transient population, transient coming in, because there'll be a presence in the schools, but also, it can provide some additional resources and funding, to our district. So I heard it was a well-attended event, and I'm looking forward for more of it. So, thank you.
I'm Clerk Brickler, and I just wanted to make a few comments. I really enjoyed attending Kids-A-Palooza. It was a great example of the Auburn community coming together with great resources and a really fun event. So I want to thank Trustee Ross for, this is multiple, are you 3 years into this? How many? So it's just it's an excellent community event. I attended the 3 schools back to school nights and was really impressed to see the HR department at each of the events helping to get volunteers prepped for to be cleared to volunteer, and a lot of community partners came to these events to like the Girl Scouts and other groups, the Master Gardeners, and just really enjoyed getting to see each of the campuses and see the staff and students. I need to do more of this, but I did get to volunteer in the Auburn Elementary cafeteria and just really enjoyed getting to talk to the staff and the students. And it's very eye-opening because it's a very hectic environment. There are so many students, and I was hustling. I could like barely keep up with wiping the tables before the next group came in. So they could definitely use the support if you can find a few hours of time and you're cleared to volunteer. Or for those of you looking for a job, that we have lots of openings. Looking forward to the resource fair tomorrow. And I know it's been a lot of work on the part of staff and community partners to put that event together. And I wanted to mention that several community partners have expressed an interest in how to support our families and those families who are moving to new sites, and how how they can help support with transportation solutions. So I'd really like to kind of understand. I haven't really been hearing a lot from families. I know we have some families who are utilizing the public transit vouchers, but I'm just interested in when we're going to hear more about Go Kids and just overall what it feels like for our families, and if they are, what their needs are, so that we can convey those to community partners who want to help us. Thank you.
Hello there, Trustee Ross. Huge shout out. Of course, Kidsapalooza is top on my list. We had 650 people showed up. We had over 45 community partners. AUTA was a huge support, and seeing our teachers there, and kids saw their teachers outside of school and they were like, "What? You live here?" So that was really cute. Skyridge PTC participated, which was phenomenal to have support. So thank you so much for coming. We're looking forward to doing one at Regional Park in May. So we'll be tapping in again. Leadership Auburn, I just want to give an update and a shout out to Leadership Auburn. We're almost finished with our project. We have we've been painting a mural. We're painting some trash cans so kids can see them and throw their trash in the appropriate places. Big red dots. And I just heard that the garden that we set up at EV Kane is actually being utilized, and PTC and the Placer County Master Gardeners are working on that to bring, it was a taco garden or a burger garden where kids will be able to take home fruits and vegetables. So that was really encouraging. And then, yeah, I just want to second what everybody else is saying. I've had the pleasure of hanging out at Auburn Elementary quite a few times, and I so love all of these students. I can't wait to get back into Skyridge for drama, but we are definitely short-staffed. So call out to volunteers, and parents. Really want to encourage parents to come in and be a part, because that's what this community is about. And that we really need parents right now to show their face so we can all come together. So yeah, that's it.
All right, moving along then, item 11, our consent agenda. President Holt, I didn't have my microphone on. Moving on to item 11, our consent agenda. I know the superintendent has something she'd like us to pull.
Yes, I would like to pull consent item letter F. The family and student handbooks. We have some further revisions to make to those. We'll bring them back in October.
Okay. All right. Is there anything anybody else would like to pull? Okay, seeing none, I move that we approve the consent agenda less item F, or with item F pulled.
I'll second that.
And all those in favor? Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All right, seeing none, the motion carried. Okay, and moving to item 12A, approval of resolution 23-24-01, sufficiency of instructional materials.
This is Superintendent Lucci Garcia. Ed Code 60119 requires that the governing board of a school district hold an annual instructional materials public hearing to determine whether the district has sufficient standards aligned textbooks or instructional materials for students in each of its schools. Additionally, we were audited by Placer County Office of Education, who came out to Auburn Elementary to determine that we have met the textbook sufficiency sufficiency requirement. And also the facilities inspection tool. We have met the requirements for our facilities as well. The reports are attached to the agenda for your review. Administration recommends approval of resolution 23-2401, sufficiency of instructional materials.
This is trustee Brickler. I had a clarifying question. And you answered one of them, which is I wasn't sure why there was only a report for Auburn Elementary, but you answered that that was a function of an audit by PCOE. And I was wondering what action will be taken to rectify the facilities deficiencies that were identified in the report.
So the typical process is, well, first of all, they might already be things that we're working on, right? So, you know, what's in our work order system, what's our maintenance flow of work, and I would have to turn that over to CBO Leslie, who oversees that department. But typically, you know, when there are things that need repair, then we've established, you know, that workflow through the maintenance and operations department.
It looked like the report was dated, I think it was August 30th. It was quite recent. I mean, I was kind of surprised that, you know, sometimes it felt like it was capturing what Auburn is like during the school year, not even, you know, before we opened our doors for the year.
Yes, we have 30 school days. We have to have this audit within 30 school days. So we open school, by the 30th day, we need to have already had this audit and this report. And that needs to be reported out to the Board of Trustees, also within that 30-day timeline. So the Placer County Office of Ed is really great at working with us to make sure that they get out to our schools with enough time for us to hold the public hearing. So that involves 10 days of posting, you know, the hearing at each of the sites. It's a whole process. And then we have the board meeting where you see the reports and then you approve them. So there's a very tight timeline. But again, PCOE is very good at working with us to make sure that we're successful in meeting that timeline.
I noticed that the enrollment number was like it was the number from last school year. I think it said 280. And could you just reiterate again what the process is for remedying deficiencies that were identified in the report, please?
Thank you, CBO Leslie. So as far as the enrollment, I think that an error on there. So we'll have to let them know on that.
Just for context, though,
Yeah,
I mean,
no.
given that there
Yeah.
are almost double that number of
Yeah.
students on that campus now, for what it's worth.
Exactly. As far as the deficiencies, very similar to when we've had Williams audits and reports in prior years. So what we do is we take these and essentially, as Superintendent Lucci Garcia had said, we make sure that those are either a project that's currently being worked on, and if not, they're entered into the work order system so we can begin tracking. In addition, in the LCAP, that's the reason why we have one of those lines for facilities specifically. So we designate, you know, kind of like a pocket of already established facilities funds, and we really target anything that would come out on a Williams report for those funds as well. So we try to make a pretty quick turnaround depending on the project. So as I did know on one of these, a couple obviously we had been working on the faucets already. So those were works in progress, and then the rest of them are already loaded into the work order system and then become items that we address.
Thank you.
Question. I did hear something, Trustee Ross, about having not having enough sufficient books, possibly at Sky Ridge, instructional books and instructional manuals. I don't know if that was something that got heard or resolved.
Principals have all certified to me that they have the proper instructional materials at their site. The process that we use to determine and to ensure that all of our sites have the books needed per student is the library technicians work with Kate in the Educational Services Department to make sure that we have what's needed. Now, there are times when we don't have the book at the site, but as long as we have ordered the books and they're ordered and paid for, we are still in compliance. So we made sure, and this sounds like, oh, make sure enough books sounds really easy, but this is a huge task, and it's something that we started to really get a hold of in Ed Services to ensure that we didn't have to rush around and get books for all kids. All kids should have books at our sites. So what we started was this process of having extra books at each site, 5 extra of each book for each, grade level. So when students come and go, we have books for them right away, and then we order and we replenish. There was some movement, as you know, this summer, and with all the movement, all of the sites had to make sure that, things were in the right place. We had a count, we had a double count, we had a lot of, staff working very hard to make sure that we had all the books that we needed. But again, we were short some books after all the count, which you would think we wouldn't be, but we were. However, Kate ordered them and was able to show PCOE the invoice showing that we have the books ordered and on their way, and that is sufficient.
Is that are those students they're still able to do everything they're able to do, or now they have to play catch up?
So this is the first I'm hearing that we don't have.
Okay, and I
textbooks in front of
apologize. It
kids.
wasn't Skyridge. It was Auburn Elementary. I shouldn't have. Yeah, it was Auburn Elementary.
So again, this is the first I'm hearing that we don't have books for kids. So,
Okay.
to my knowledge, everything's been ordered now. It could be that there are students without books in front of them and the books are on the way, but we do have online access to much of our curriculum, not all, but much of it. And then, from there, I don't know how to answer your question, to be honest, because I'd have to find out exactly what it is that you're talking about.
Okay.
So I can look into that with the principal.
Perfect. Thank you.
President Holt, are there any additional clarifying questions? Okay. All right. Well, with that, I move that we approve resolution 23-24-01.
I just wanted to follow up that it would be helpful to get an update about the facilities discussion that we've had. I don't know what point that it would be the appropriate time to get an update on the work orders and things that are so that we know that the deficiencies have been resolved.
Right. And we can put that in as new requests
Okay.
at the end of the meeting here.
Okay. So I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All right, seeing none, motion carries. And moving to item 12B, approval of the 22-23 unaudited actuals report.
This is Superintendent Lucia Garcia. Ed Code requires a district to close its books and adopt the report of financial activities and positions by September 15th of each year for the preceding fiscal year. This report that's attached to this agenda includes the 22-23 unaudited actuals financial report. And Heather Leslie will speak a little bit to that.
Good evening again, CBO Leslie. Traditionally, the unaudited actuals don't have a full presentation like you guys would usually see at any interim report. I just kind of wanted to remind again. So when we do the original budget, the estimated actuals, what we're kind of seeing is that snapshot in time of what our 2022-23 fiscal year looked like. Was included in that original budget report. That's kind of part and parcel with it. And so what these are essentially, as we finish clearing up any accounts, any old payables that might be outstanding that we need to clear out, change stuff over into the new fiscal year, any monies that maybe we had budgeted that we thought we'd receive that we haven't, those get cleared out as well, and kind of where everything shakes out to be at the end. So just a couple of things that I really wanted to point out to you guys that would be more significant differences. We did have less expenditures than we had anticipated with the estimated actuals, which is a great thing in our position. Specifically, as we look at what some of our contributions came out to, we had less contributions to other resources. So that would be our routine restricted maintenance that we're required to contribute to, and then also for our special education contributions. So the routine restricted maintenance is based off of 3% of your whole expenditures in all of the general fund. Because those decreased, our budgeted contribution to that decreased as well. So we went down about $200,000 in that required contribution to that fund. And likewise, as we got to the end of the special education and purchase orders for the contractors were liquidated out that were unused, or we were able to kind of reconcile with the staff that we were able to hire in lieu of contractors, we ended up about $1.9 million less overall. So we're very excited about that. So it's between the two, it's approximately $1.9 million less in contribution. Just because that is such a discussion I know that we've had internally here as we look at that. So I'm very excited. I'm really hoping that we can, as we work through our special education budgeting meetings, really nail down where those differences were. So we can free money up in the budget. We always want to increase a little bit as we budget and into first interim our budget for that contribution. But we don't want to, of course, hold hostage money that we could possibly be using. So we want to make sure that gets freed up as well. In light of this, there also were additional costs. I think we increased a little bit on the contribution to Alta Vista by a little bit to close out the Alta Vista books in Fund 09. However, at the end of the day, our ending fund balance ended up being more than we anticipated and the estimated actuals. So we ended up being $930,000 approximately more positive in our ending fund balance than we had in estimated actuals. So the original budget that we had the ending fund balance from our estimated actuals. So it was based off of that. So as we come and look at some multi-year projections, I've updated that. And as we come into first interim, you guys will see the increase of the ending fund balance for that as well.
Is that reflected in the multi-year projection that was in our packet?
Yes, as we get to that, I'll go through that
Okay.
too and point out what was included in that. But yes, because this was our most updated information, I want to make sure that was included as well. Otherwise, there were no big surprises throughout the rest of the funds. Obviously, many of them look probably exactly the same as you had seen. And essentially, the packet really consists of some additional forms that you'll see, including the GAN, which we'll address in a few minutes, just an update of the Form A of attendance, and then all of the SACS forms, which include ones for each fund. And I'm happy to entertain any question.
This is Trustee Brickler. One of the things that we learned at the budget workshop that we had with PCOE is to look for the variances and try to understand. And so I was really focusing on looking at some of our unaudited actuals for 22-23 and then comparing it against our adopted 23-24 budget. And so I was trying to understand why some things are shifting. One thing I noticed was that there is still an item in 23-24 about transfers to charter schools in lieu of property taxes. And I was wondering why that would linger when the charter is not in operation.
Absolutely. So we actually give in lieu taxes to 2 charter schools. So or had. So you still will see transfers to charter schools for our 22-23. Obviously, possibly larger because we did have to give in lieu taxes to Alta Vista Charter School, and we also are in the jurisdictions for the Pathways or iLearn through the Placer County Office of Education as a charter school. So we also contribute in lieu taxes to iLearn. So it still will be on our budget for 23-24, but it will be reduced. And in fact, we just did our end of the year LCFF calculator to kind of project how that will look considering the end of the year enrollment. So as we come into first interim, you'll still see that. It's just going to be a reduced amount.
Could you explain that concept? I don't understand it.
It's okay. So like everything else, it's really super simple. Not complicated at all. So essentially what it is because we have ADA that is within our district or average daily attendance within our district, but they're choosing to go to a charter school that either we support as dependent or is within our sphere of influence that claims or comes off of also state funding. So if you have a charter school that's completely independent funding, it's not going to really count. If it's something that we don't transfer ADA or students to in and out, it's not going to be a huge hit. However, in our district, because we had the dependent charter and it was within our jurisdiction or our sphere, that is something that we calculate out their ADA, and a portion of that tax is how they're funded through the state. So when you would look at like Alta Vista's budget, a majority of when it says LCFF funding that they would get in, it's basically that amount of money of our property taxes and just shifted over to their budget as their income. Similarly with iLearn, or pathways. I've seen it comes in both ways. We have ADA that's from our district that Placer County Office of Education enters, and they give us those numbers. We input those in our calculator, and then it takes that percentage of our taxes, and then we give an in lieu to iLearn as well.
Okay, so if there are students enrolled in our district who attend iLearn, we give revenue to PCOE. Whatever portion we would have received for those students goes to PCOE.
Yes and no. So it's
Some portion.
it's pseudo. It's very strange. So we have to show that. We have to show that calculation. We make that calculation. We send it to the state. State verifies, and that money is then allocated directly out to that charter school. Now, because we have a minimum guarantee of funding with the state, so the cylinders, and we know that from just our ADA itself and how much it is, we should receive X amount of money. So by reducing those property taxes by however much, we still need to meet that minimum. So that much, those I think it was orange in the descriptors in the pictures that you've seen me do and PCOE has done, the state then makes that up for that so that we hit our minimum. Now, if we were a basic aid district where we just only collect property taxes and we don't have that state aid to make that minimum because we're above, we would take a hit, essentially a hit on the property taxes because the state wouldn't be backfilling us to meet that minimum. So in essence, it's showing that our property taxes are going out, but because we still need state funding to meet that minimum, the
gets
state
backfilled.
actually compensates us for it. We get reimbursed in a way.
When will Alta Vista no longer be in that calculation? I mean, it's not,
They will be no longer in the calculation as of this next budget year. So
I thought I saw it
23,
in the, on 23, 24.
you'll see it for iLearn.
Oh, that's just the iLearn. Okay.
That's just
Thank
iLearn.
you.
Mhm.
Okay.
Because previously with Alta
you said
Vista
both
Charter,
of them,
yeah,
yeah.
it was well over it was close to $2 million at least that we sent over because it was basically all of Alta Vista's starting budget, which doesn't seem large to us, but it was, over $1 million. That was our in lieu taxes.
Thank you.
Absolutely.
I noticed increases in categories like books and supplies, materials and supplies, and non-capitalized equipment. I mean, I know we're working so hard to reduce costs, so I was just wondering what is driving some of those increases.
Depending on which category they're in. So we have had when you look at this report specifically, it doesn't line out whether it's restricted or unrestricted either. So we have had an increase of expenses, and a lot of times that those are going to be from our restricted. So if you look at the multi-year from the budget, you'll see that while services in the general fund and even in unrestricted are quite large, I will not say anything about that, but books is actually relatively low in our unrestricted, which is, where we're really needing to cut from. Where we expend a lot more, where we've been trying to funnel those costs are to those one-time or restricted funds. So you will see big increases as we're trying to spend down, the ESSER grant or title funds or anything of that nature. You'll see those increases from the prior year.
Okay. I have some other questions, but they're more pertaining to comparing what we did in 22, 23 and what I'm seeing some increases in 23, 24 when I know we're trying really hard to control costs. One that stood out was under capital outlay, land improvements were increasing to 500,000, and I didn't know what the plan was or what.
And that
means.
was on our budget. Because
Correct.
right
Yeah.
now, I mean, I'm not really comparing budget to that. We're
Yeah.
in the unaudited actuals, we're kind of shifting. So I apologize, I was not prepared with that from our current budget, because that's really where we'll see that in first interim as we get down to that. But can you show me
It's
specific?
on page 8 of the SACS one, or just
Thank
in
you for
total.
finding it.
Yeah, like, okay, thank you. Because this comparison is actually 21, 22 to 22, 23 in the unaudited actuals. It's not to our current budget.
Oh, because we have
Mhm.
22, 23 unaudited actuals, and then it's compared against 23, 24 budget.
Okay. As I'm looking through the funds, it's comparison of the other two.
Okay.
Page 16.
In bold letters at the bottom, it says page 10.
Yeah, there are multiple page numbers.
There are.
Yeah, I'm like,
It's page 8, 10, or 12, depending on what system you want to use.
it stands out because the land improvements are.
I don't
up
have the bolded ones. I have my old printed one.
49%. So it's kind
Oh,
of
yeah.
glaring.
Well, and I mean, we did have some improvements that we did, but it was
These are budgeted though for 23, 24.
okay. And that's possible too, because we do have some land improvements in the restricted side that are still have to be qualified of that because of the costs that were in our ESSER plan. So those are still moving forward. Some of those bottle filler replacements that still have to be under the 6,000s, and then also the shade structures too. Those are still like pending, but I would say probably not. However, it's still lined out in our plan that way. So that's how we've budgeted. We haven't adjusted the ESSER plan as of yet.
And this is President Holt. Does that also include then like the PA system and clocks that we recently approved? for
Yes.
each game?
Those would also go under improvements as well.
Well, see, there's another line item though that seems like I would expect to see that sort of improvement. There's a separate one of buildings and improvements of buildings that makes more sense for those sort of expenses. We've been like bottle fillers and PA systems. When I read land improvements, I mean, it sounds like you're building something new on a piece of unimproved land. So
Yeah,
maybe I could email some of the questions and we
absolutely.
could get more information at another time.
And a lot of the titles are not ones that we've made, or necessarily do we think the titles of the resource codes or the object codes fit. It's just here's what they are and here's what the state's titled them. So improvements of buildings are like a 6,100 and it still can be capitalized. Improvements to land is like a 6,200. And they also have specific qualifications in the school's accounting manuals of what fits into those. So for example, because the project is over X amount of dollars, it would move into a different category. Improvements of buildings could really be lots of different things, but I agree with you, but you were not going to see that in the general fund because the project for IT is actually going to be paid for out of restricted capital funds. So that will end up being budgeted at first interim out of I think it's Fund 25 that we're going to end up taking that from. So, but Fund 01 is going to be anything that specifically is in that general fund. But like I said, it does include those restrictives, and we do have those I'm using air quotes, improvement projects that do come with our ESSER. And that's what I think I've seen our biggest driver of those accounts are. We don't really have anything else planned that we would take out of general fund. If it was anything that was actual construction or modernization, we definitely want to take it out of one of our capital funds.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Does anybody else have any additional clarifying questions?
Administration recommends approval of the 22-23 unaudited actuals report.
This is Clerk Brickler, and I move that we approve the unaudited actuals report.
And I'll second that.
And all those in favor? Aye.
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 And those opposed? Seeing none, motion carries. And point of order here, we actually have to go back. I believe item 12A was a resolution, and so we need to do a roll call vote. So if we could go back, please. And
I was ready for 12C, but apparently not 12A. So I'll go ahead and do a roll call vote for approval of item 12A, and I'll just go down the line. President Holt.
Aye.
Vice President Wedge.
Aye.
Clerk Brickler, aye. Trustee Grigsby.
Aye.
And Trustee Ross.
Aye.
Thank you, Clerk Brickler. All right, and item 12C, the approval of resolution 23-24-02 GAN limit.
This is Superintendent Lucci Garcia. The GAN limit is intended to monitor the growth in state and local government spending by linking year-to-year changes in expenditures to changes in inflation and average daily attendance for schools. Our unaudited actuals report includes the GAN limit calculation. However, the board must also annually adopt a resolution approving the calculated GAN limit. Administration recommends approval of the 23-24-02 GAN limit.
And are there any clarifying questions on the GAN limit? Okay. Seeing none, This is President Holt. I move that we approve item 12C, approval of resolution 23-24-02.
And I'll second that.
And I'll do a roll call vote. Trustee Ross.
Aye.
Trustee Grigsby.
Aye.
Clerk Brickler, aye. Vice President Wedge
Aye.
and President Holt.
Aye. And the motion carries. Okay, and before we move on to item 13, I'm gonna put us on a 5-minute recess. I have. What do we have? 44 after, let's round up to 45. So we'll resume at 8:50. It is 8:50 and we are resuming our meeting here. Superintendent Lucci Garcia brought up that we have a policy that we haven't always been following about having a motion and the board extending our meetings past 9 p.m. So with that, I move that we extend this meeting past 9 p.m. Until we conclude our business.
I'll second.
And all those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed? All right, seeing none, the motion carries and we're gonna keep on moving. All right, moving into item 13, board governance, and 13A, board policy updates.
CSBA made changes to board policies in March 2023. So at the last board meeting, you had in June 2023, at the last board meeting, you had a copy of those policies as a first read, and this is the second read and adoption of those changes. Administration recommends approval of the board policy updates.
And this is Vice President Wedge, and I would like to remove item board policy 5141.6 and also administration regulation 5141.6 for further discussion at a future board meeting.
This is Clerk Brickler. Would you mind repeating the numbers?
It is BP 5141.6 and AR 5141.6, and it's on page 6 of 14 in the draft.
And all this silence is everybody pulling up the document.
For a clarifying question, may I ask the interim superintendent to give us more background on, typically these policies are required by law because there's been a change in state law that requires our local district policies to mirror what we're required to do by the state or feds.
And also like to add to that, while you're looking into that, is if there's any kind of potential impact for delaying this for future discussion.
I'm sorry, just to verify, Vice President Wedge, you are saying that we're looking at, we have to approve this tonight, right? But you'd like to have the discussion about this in a future board meeting? Or you want to make the approval later?
Approve everything except those two items that I mentioned.
Thank you.
I think the question to me was, and tell me if I'm wrong, what is the impact if we pull this one board policy off and approve the rest of the board policy? If we're going to have a discussion about it at the next board meeting, that would allow me time to get more information to the board regarding this particular policy, so you can have a conversation about it. As far as the impact, I mean, I think the sooner we adopt our board policies, the better. But if there's a policy in question, then I think there'd be a bigger impact if the board didn't have time to discuss it.
Would it be possible for there to be discussion this evening about concerns so we can kind of start the process of?
Doesn't he need to get a second before we, because he was making, are you making a motion? I apologize, Vice President Wedge.
Well, on that, I'll go ahead and it was more of a request, but I will make a motion to approve this this draft excluding board policy 5146 or 5141.6 and AR 5141.6 for further discussion and approval at the next board meeting.
For
All right,
those who
so-
may not have it in front of them, this is regarding increasing health equity and the utilization of telehealth to deliver healthcare services in schools.
This is President Holt. I'll second that motion to approve the board policy updates with the caveat that we will return to BP and AR 5141.6 at our next board meeting to discuss further. Sounds like Vice President Wedge, you've got more you want to talk about there. To circle back to that. All right, so is there another motion or?
Well, could we have discussion?
Yeah, absolutely.
Would it be possible for you to share some of your initial concerns so that it can help administration address your
It's just,
questions or?
it's just something just looking into and haven't had a chance to really dive into it. And I'm really kind of I'm still looking up information on it. And so before I want to have the full picture and a full background on it before we go forward and approving these new board policies.
This is President Holt. Is there any other further discussion on that? That's, as I see it, I don't see that we'd be penalized for not doing that this evening, just this one. So I don't see any concern with returning to this one next month. Okay, seeing that there's no further discussion, all those in favor of approving the board policy updates from June 2023, with the exception of 5141.6, which we are tabling until next month. All those in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
And those opposed?
Nay.
Okay. All right. And sorry, I saw three.
Are
you asking for
Yeah, sorry, I was asking Trustee Ross, were you aye or nay? Okay. Okay. All right, then moving to item 13B, board direction requests and updates on requests.
Okay, so the first update is regarding the priorities of the interim superintendent. So I did send those out to the board as requested in mid-July. And this is the opportunity to bring them here forward to you for your discussion.
This is President Holt. So I'll just briefly go through some of the top priorities that the superintendent put down. And this is available online on the website as part of our agenda as an attachment. Underneath the item 13B1, there are several attachments. So I encourage anybody listening to check those out. So the draft interim superintendent priorities. Priority 1 is to restructure our district for fiscal soundness. Priority 2 is academics and supporting all learners. Priority 3, professional development. And priority 4 is communication. All right, I just want to open this up to any discussion. We could address these at all. And just one other note to none of this conversation is going to include anything financial or anything else that is supposed to be or it's not agendized, not part of this.
This is Trustee Grigsby. I absolutely love how much communication there's been multiple forms of communication. There has been updates. I am absolutely ecstatic on both the board and the parent side of that. So I'm super happy about that. You can see it, you can feel it, you can hear it. So thank you.
Thank you.
This is Clerk Brickler. I just wasn't entirely clear what our process was. So this is our chance to give any feedback about this plan is right now or about these priorities. I wasn't sure how we were going to proceed. I didn't know if we were just kind of sharing this draft so that we were being more transparent with the community or,
yeah. So this
where we're headed with this.
my understanding of this is absolutely sharing it with the community, showing what these goals are that we have, the priorities for the interim superintendent, and the opportunity to have that discussion in public. And it's not on here to approve or do anything. It's just kind of information discussion. I think if we have any concerns, then, you know, let's raise those and try to adjust that. But this isn't something that we will have to approve in an open session. So looking at restructuring the district for fiscal soundness, great. I like, you know, that you're prioritizing cutting $2.5 million. I think just that maybe we won't try to, you know, if you don't hit that 2.5 million first go around, you know, maybe we won't just axe you for that. So I think, you know, that's a good goal. So and so far I'm satisfied with what we've seen promoting the fiscal oversight and monitoring and moving towards these better financial decisions for the district.
I had communicated with this and it's with the interim superintendent about this, just that I understand. I'm glad to see this as a top priority. And I was hoping for kind of like a more nuanced, in addition to having to make significant cuts, to see if there are other ways to offset. I don't know if there are other revenue sources or just that whether it involves, I know it's primarily cuts, but if there are other strategies we can employ, I'd like to see those as well to get to solvency.
And this person, just to clarify, Clerk Brickler, are you talking about, you know, additional grants and funding or?
Other revenue sources, whatever those may be. I know, I mean, there are grant opportunities. The trouble is that they're time limited sometimes, and that's kind of a short-term fix. But I mean, one way is to offer, you know, programs that draw students to the district, for example. I know we've struggled with this for a long time, and it's been a high priority, is to find ways to increase enrollment. And that's not the only revenue, you know, producing strategy, but, and it takes money to make money sometimes, but.
Yeah.
I think for when it to Trustee Ross, when you're talking about restructuring our district, you know, and kind of looking ahead at some of our other requests, I want to make sure that we're doing this in collaboration with, so that when we're talking about cutting maybe a teacher's pay for a day, whatever that is, that it's in total. I know that we have unions, it's all goes through a certain period, but the more collaborative and proactive we can be on that stance, that's my only request for that, is just make sure we're collaborating with the community. Are we just going through one at a time? I apologize.
Yeah, no, absolutely.
Perfect.
Sorry, this is President Holt. Does anybody else have additional comments or feedback? All right, so I'm not seeing any.
Oh, you mean like overall? Sorry.
I have more questions too. Yeah, sorry.
Okay.
I think we heard tonight from Human Resources about, there's also some nuance with professional development in terms of getting feedback from staff about some of the, their priorities for professional development. So I just wanted to mention that, that would obviously be one of the strategies to get to that goal.
And yeah, I mean, that's priority number 3. Yeah, so.
And I do see, Trustee Ross, that you say staff feels valued and supported. So I do want to let people know out there in Zoom land and also in our audience that this is one of your goals. And I fully believe that you will help make that happen. So I know we're all kind of counting on that. And then I also wanted to point out that I heard something today about communication that made me super excited. And I guess you call it a roadshow. But I just wanted to say that we can actually see some of these taking place, and you know, that's just really encouraging. I do want to make sure that our communication and how we're communicating with people is transparent, and I know that has been an issue in the past, and I don't see it being an issue right now, but I do want to bring it up because it is something that that people are kind of a little PTSD about. So I appreciate your transparency and as transparent as you can be. I think that's all I have.
And this President Holt. So are there any additional comments on this or additional feedback this time? Well, Interim Superintendent, thank you for putting this together. I think this is something that the board is happy to work with. As Clerk Brickler said, maybe we also want to see if we can add, included with restructuring the district, make sure that we're also trying to bring in additional income. But obviously cutting is kind of the hard part too, that we have to get done. So thank you for putting this together for us and for already clearly working to support these priorities.
Thank you.
And moving on then to item 13B2, the update on the policy and flow chart for department and site communications.
Yeah, so this was requested by email and I did send that out to the board. You also have it in your green folders because I heard that it might have been hard to read or hard to open. So it should be there. Now, this is something that we started to develop in prior years, but now we have it on the flow chart. We're going to take this forward to our Auburn leadership team meetings, ALTM, and to the principals, and then they can also, utilize this system as well. So going back to clear communication, what that looks like. And so we started using something called levels of need last year in the subject line of emails and such, but we're not using that the same way. And in fact, we weren't using it accurately last year. So we're going to take that back. This levels of need is still something that we need to discuss and figure out how do we implement this to where we're all using it appropriately. So that was emailed to you.
This is Clerk Brickler. May I ask, I think part of this came from a conversation about when there's an issue at a site, for example, who is responsible to communicate that to the families of that school? Is it, is it the principal? Is it district level administration? So how do how would a principal fit into this? Are they considered education services in this model? I consider ed services to be, well, it was a department within the district, but I don't believe there are currently staff or limited staff. And
It's absolutely a department. The educational services department is actually an existing, yes. And I do include principals in that because they're absolutely, they're at the site level of educational services. I mean, but let's be honest, principals do wear all the hats at their site. They're the site leader, but they have a support team behind them. And so they are ensuring that our students are receiving the education that they need in whatever way possible. So I didn't recall that this was about messaging to families, but I can tell you what the process is for that. And we just had a principal meeting. So this was a fresh conversation from yesterday. So the way that works is this: when there are incidents at sites, there are incidents that principals handle, and they put in areas, they call families, they do the thing. When there are incidents that rise above a level of what they're used to dealing with or what they know how to do, they call me. And then I walk them through, or I refer them to Kelly, our director of student support. And so that's pretty much the way that works. And then from there, it depends, right? So if they call me and I have a response, the first question I'm going to ask, if it's an incident, did you investigate? Did you use the protocols from our training? Did you go to the Ed Services Manual and click the links and look for Ed Code and board policy? Because they really do have to abide by board policy and Ed Code. So that, there are so many layers. So I feel like your question I could do like a 2-hour, thing on it. But long story short, I do consider principals to be part of the educational services team. They are that team leader at the site. And they do report things to me. Now, there have been times when things weren't reported or they weren't sure if they should be, or if someone's new, but those are all those moments where you can go in and say, okay, so in this situation, I did want to know, and here's why why. And that is something that I take very seriously. In fact, typically in my trainings of principals and other groups of people, we will role play and do some, okay, if this happens, then what? Or what would you do? Or what should we do? And then we have a conversation about, is this the best policy? Because, now when I say policy, I don't mean bypassing board policy or ed code, because we don't do that. And everybody that works with me knows we don't do that. But is it our best policy? And President Holt said something earlier today. He did say that we are always revisiting our policies and procedures. We always will, as long as I'm here, because I believe that is the most important aspect of what we do, is making sure that what we're doing is the right thing. And so, number one, law, right? And then two, what are we doing in response to certain things? And when it comes to messaging families about incidents and that type of thing, sometimes that will come from me. If it's something that in light of the investigation, or who I have to have respond, or that is something that I determine with the person reporting to me based on what we've learned through the investigation, or based on the fact that we have to message now and still conduct the investigation. And so that should never be on the shoulders of the principal to come up with that language. That's where I go to Angie, and she and I, we look at the law and we look at the messaging to the community and what people need to know, and we craft a message together.
This is President Holt, if I could interject here too. So as I'm reading the communication flow chart, then this looks like it's more or less, once information, it needs to be reported to the district level. Is that what you were going for here?
Yes. And to be honest, so again, I don't want to minimize like a fight or just or disgruntled issue at a school site. I don't want to minimize that, because we don't want any of that in our schools, and we're working hard not to have situations where students feel the need to act out. However, some of those things happen on a daily basis or weekly basis or monthly basis, and principals handle them because they know what to do. It's clear in ed code, it's clear in board policy. There's a clear process. Sometimes things rise to a different level where there are question marks. We will not live in question marks. They will contact me. And if I don't know the answer, I'm going to find out, because that is really the best way to serve our staff, our students, our community.
So this is President Holt again. So essentially, though, everything on a school site is reported to the principal, and then that principal makes the report up to, whether it's on the left side of the chart we're looking at, the Child Nutrition Business Office Maintenance Operations, or to the Ed Services Student Support Human Resources side.
Absolutely.
Okay. So on a school site, the principal is the conduit for information, right? Everything is reported to the principal of that site.
Correct.
Okay. Thank you. Are there any additional questions on that or discussion? Okay. Seeing none, moving to item 13B, 13B13. An update on fixtures and any big school site or facility concerns.
So I did send this email on the update on fixtures. What I can tell you right here, right now, is that we still have some, so regarding fixtures, and by fixtures, I mean faucets. I was told by Justin that we don't call them faucets, we call them fixtures. So I'm trying to use the correct terminology. So where we are right now is we have a few parts still on order, waiting for those parts to come in. Once we have parts for all of the sinks that were tagged, or the faucets or fixtures that were tagged, then maintenance will install the parts, and then they will begin the flushing process. And there's a log on each tagged fixture where the log will be filled out by maintenance when they come by and flush the fixture. Now, there were some questions about whether, or like, who has to do that work. And our maintenance team, they are the experts that do that work. Nobody else should be doing that work. And then they will fill out the log appropriately, and then they will test the water again once the flushing process is completed, to make sure that that fixture meets the required levels as per the law. And then we will, by we, I mean the team, will send out an email to everybody letting them know this is the status. And then as far as big big school or facility concerns, I will continuously update the board if there are big projects or big things going on, where we are with that. And Heather and I are working together on that. She has already sent me some updates to send to you, knowing that I was going to be asking for them regularly. So those will keep coming.
Trustee Grigsby, when you mentioned that they were on back order, the fixtures, or there was something, they weren't here yet.
Yeah, I'm assuming back order because it's taking, some time, but I could be wrong, but they are definitely ordered and we're waiting for them to be either shipped or however they're going to get delivered. Yeah.
Maybe just a little mention of that, like maybe why, or if there's an update, a delivery date, maybe in there, just so that it's not unknown.
To the board or to the staff?
Please, yes.
Oh, to
Yeah.
the board. Okay.
Thank you.
If I have that information, I'll send
Yeah.
it out. And if I don't, I'll let you know I don't.
And if I can add to that real quick, being in the trades myself, the supply chain is just so messed up right now. And I can tell you, we're waiting on equipment, going on 2 years. And so, and it's affecting everything, especially when you're dealing with older equipment. So, and that's usually the narrative that we get. When it shows up, it shows up.
Trustee Ross, I know there was another concern last board meeting with a drywall. I believe it was in a kindergarten or the TK class. Did that also get handled?
I believe I emailed that update to the board as well. I can go back and check my sent items to make sure. I don't have it in front of me, but I could, I will go back to make sure that you got it. And if not, I will send that to you.
Okay.
Yeah.
Thank you. I was trying to find it as well. And I think
Okay.
it said something like update from summer. It was kind of like the summer work that was completed.
Okay.
And so there were a few items that were in progress, but that email was from like 13 days ago. So I don't know if that is inclusive of some of the work that's been done.
Okay. I will look into that and get you an update on that.
All right. Think moving on then to item 13B14, update with data from exit interviews. I think that's what Michelle Bunt provided for us earlier.
Yes.
And moving to then item 5 under there, an update on the wellness centers with an email and follow-up presentation to include specific metrics to use to determine effectiveness.
Yes, so I have spoken with Kelly Young. She does have an update and ready for presentation. So she'll be bringing you that. I was going to go ahead and forward you that update as well, but I'm waiting on the metrics. So she is working with PCOE to determine the metrics. What I have for you is what former director Janine Hughes presented last year. I still have that data that I could resend you, and then I have the data that Kelly also provided, which it may be the same data. I'll take a look at that. I just literally got it last night or yesterday afternoon. But again, what I don't have are the metrics. And I know that was something that the board wished to have. So she's working with PCOE to get those metrics established, and then I will send those out to you.
Trustee Ross, I think one of the major things in watching tonight's presentation was the exhaustion of teachers. And if we can see the impact that wellness is getting these, students and doing something with them so that possibly that could impact our teachers' exhaustion, right? How much is wellness helping out with that in a non-attached way, right? Like they're not going directly to the teacher, they're helping with the students, but in turn that really impacts the teacher. So I think that is kind of one of the things I might be adding on to that, but that's why I think the impact assessment and how many students they're looking at and what the turnaround is with students is going to be super crucial in this.
So how many students are served is in what Kelly shared with me yesterday.
Okay.
But again, I just don't have the metrics.
Oh,
So
definitely. I'm just saying when you do talk to Kelly, like this is the reasoning.
Yes.
We want to see how this is impacting our teachers.
okay, so she'll speak to that during her presentation.
Right.
I don't know that we collect that. Or I don't know that we collect data in a way to answer that, but perhaps.
No,
but class
we
and wellness should be. connecting assessment, and I'm sorry to cut you off. Assessment impact, they should be collecting that information.
If anything, I would imagine they
For a
may have
grant.
more information about how they've impacted individual students or.
Yeah.
This is
Yes.
President Holt, just a point of order here. Make sure we, putting our names first, especially once everybody starts kind of talking rapid fire back
Thank
and
you.
forth. Thank you. And Superintendent,
This is Superintendent Lucia Garcia. Yes, I don't see evidence that we have that correlation, but we could probably draw some inferences from the presentation that Kelly will bring. So again, but if we can get the metrics,
Right.
then we'll have more information about, what we're really looking at. So when I get those, I'll forward them on, and she'll present on this topic as well.
thank you. Okay. Moving to item 13B16, regarding direction given to move forward to the legal team in order to pursue the Placer Community Foundation appraisal grant.
So we did send all the information out to our legal team, and I did forward you the response from legal. So now I guess my question is, what are our next steps now that you've read the what legal sent?
This is or Clerk Brickler. Are we allowed to talk about the contents of the memo here?
Well,
It
since you,
hasn't been shared publicly. It
Okay,
seemed like
I see what
the
you're saying.
memo was focused on whether or not appraisals are made public. That was what I read in the memo. And I wanted to point out that in our March meeting is when we published our appraisals for 3 different sites. We published appraisals for Rock Creek, for Sherland Track, and for Kemper Road properties. So, we're hearing this now after the fact. I did reach out to Placer Community Foundation, and I didn't get something official in writing, but my understanding was that they would still be willing to proceed with the grant, even if the new appraisal were to be kept internal, that wasn't a condition of the grant. I thought that there were other questions that the memo was going to answer. It seemed like it was really focused on whether or not an appraisal should be made public,
This is
which had
President
already
Holt.
occurred.
Yeah, right. This is President Holt. I think that makes sense. So we're turning over to legal because they're going to look at what is concerning legal.
Yeah.
I
thought there was another question. I don't mean to interrupt you. I thought that there were these other questions about whether or not what happens if in the case of 2 appraisals or multiple appraisals or timing of appraisals, things like that. It wasn't clear. I thought that there was more that they were going to try to address.
Okay. Well, that's I'm satisfied with the response personally. Is there further discussion on that before we give direction? That's it. So, I think at this point, I am in support of moving forward to accept that grant and get that additional appraisal. And I think we need the majority of the board
I'm in
support.
support of that as well.
Okay. Okay.
All right. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you, Clerk Brickler, for bringing that to our attention too. Trustee Ross here. I just really appreciate you making that happen.
It's really Placer Community Foundation. They deserve all the credit.
Perfect. Even better.
Okay. And moving to item 13B17 regarding alternate monthly dates for the regular board meetings. So we've got a proposal here for the second Thursdays.
I would just point out that the August meeting is, I believe it's a 3rd Thursday, because we typically try to avoid meeting the same week that school starts.
Mhm.
So I don't know if that one needs like an asterisk since it says they're all second Thursdays. This is new. We've been very consistent about meeting on Wednesdays, but I don't see a problem with this. And in my initial review, none of these dates seem to be in conflict with holidays and kind of other major events. I don't know if others had.
Trustee Ross, I have a discrepancy because I'm on the Police Chief Advisory Committee, and I've been on for the past 2 years. It's something that has helped me in this position. It's something that helps me in the community, and that is on the same date as all these meetings. So I hate to have to miss something that's so impactful to what we do.
Trustee Grigsby, I still believe that the Wednesdays work. So I mean, I'm okay with it staying the way it is.
And trustee Ross, is there another date that would work for you?
Just that Thursday is not good for me at all. Any other
Sounds-
Thursday would be fine. Third Thursday, fourth Thursday, second Tuesday is fine. It's just that Thursdays.
The
I,
reason that we went with the second week is because of where our breaks and such fall and holidays fall. In addition, our annual organizational meeting has to be held in a very strict time frame in
Mm.
December. And that is almost always during the second week of December.
This is Clerk Brickler. There's another consideration, which is that we just have to make sure we're meeting before particular deadlines. We have a significant March 15th deadline, a May 15th deadline. I don't know which others. There are some in June as well for budget adoption. I'm not saying that means that we can't keep it as is with Wednesdays. I guess I'm just trying to think through when we last discussed this, we were looking for an alternative. Is moving it one day to Thursday the only other way we could do this? Is Tuesday, the second Tuesday, is that too soon for staff? What are our options for trying to find something that works for everybody?
This is President Holt. I know that I couldn't do Mondays generally. And so I don't think anybody wants to do Fridays. So I really does kind of limit us to Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursdays. And so I know now on that second Wednesday, we've got a conflict for Vice President Wedge. He's hoping to try to do something else that he's missed out on. The Thursdays, we have that conflict. To Clerk Brickler's question, is there like a staffing requirement? Would it be an undue burden if we were to do it on Tuesdays?
Are there second Tuesdays a conflict for anyone that is known?
And with the note too, that we could go back and let's look at it. Maybe we go back and get
please.
back to the superintendent.
Mhm.
If you could send out an email to follow up on this and then give
Yes.
everybody on the board a moment to look at their calendars and then just respond with a yay or nay.
and also I do just want to point out, I mean, because if we do have 3 board members that want to stick with Wednesday, is that something we can do?
Oh,
Or
I
we're
think
just-
sticking with Wednesday certainly could be something that we do. I think
Okay.
if we just, we're trying to accommodate you, we're trying to accommodate Vice President Wedge, and all of us on our schedule too. So
This is Clerk Brickler, from a staffing perspective, is Tuesday a challenge because it's a kind of a quick turnaround from posting on Friday to, is that too soon?
I don't see any kind of staffing challenge with having the date be on Tuesday, but I do want to remind the board that we will have to go back and change, your handbook and bylaws and such, so that if we change the day, we'll have to go back and reflect that in some of the work you've done.
Okay. So I think if we could leave this at Superintendent, if you'd please just email everybody.
Sure.
Board members, trustees, if you'd please respond to that email. And I think we just make our decision from there.
Perfect.
That works.
Okay.
All right. And then item 13B18 regarding budget cut proposals.
So I was given direction to find a way to cut from the budget. So this was the direction I was given in June. And the number that the dollar amount of that we needed to cut is 2.5 million. And that came out of many discussions, budget discussions and such with PCOE. So with that direction, the update I'm providing you today is includes 1.75 million, because as President Holt said, it's not entirely possible to go through and just cut 2.5, right? And always when you're looking at cutting, you're also thinking, how can we gain back revenue, right? So pretty much everything that I heard today during the section where we talked about my priorities, those are all topics that are in mind anytime you go through and you make cuts to a budget. So there are several attachments that go along with this that I hope you've had a chance to look at. My attachments are all over. Let me get them together. One of those attachments that is attached is the budget committee report, because we have had a committee in the past to address the fiscal concerns. And that budget committee met and put together a fiscal recovery plan that was taken to the board and was approved by the board. And then from there, you all know the history. So I did include that because that was the committee that made the decisions based on, our revenues and our financial situation at the time. Also, what you'll see is proposed and implemented reductions by the fiscal year. So what that means is there are some reductions we're already making that we are making that don't need to be bargained or to have further approval. For instance, we went through position control and we looked at what was budgeted for and what we're actually spending on positions. And then there are some positions that we are going to be cutting. And then there are some items that will need to be bargained as well. So going back to the comment about collaboration, absolutely. We collaborate with, we have the budget committee here that was collaborated with last year before I was in this position. And, we always collaborate with our bargaining units. It doesn't mean that we always agree, but we try to collaborate mutually with our bargaining units. We always talk to our staff and our principals and families, trying to make sure that what we're doing is the best in a not so great situation. So a lot of thought was put into this, and it is not easy to bring this to you. It's not easy. I've had to speak with people about what's on this paper. It's never going to be easy, but by the same token, if I can't go through here and propose some cuts to you, then I'm concerned that we won't have a district to discuss. So with the overall health of the district in mind, we had to go through and make some tough decisions that I'm bringing to you tonight. And so again, this is just an update to you. So however you want to discuss it, I'm here.
This is President Holt. Now, would all of these need to be approved by the board? Or are some of these steps that you'd be able to take without board approval?
There's several steps here that I would be able to take without board approval.
So I think some of these that would require board approval, such as going down here, discussing changing to K-8 at all 3 sites. I think we probably should put those on our agenda sooner rather than later. And I would like to see that on each one of these proposals that would require board action, I would like to see on our next month's agenda.
Okay.
This is Clerk Brickler, and I would like to ask about, there are 2 items on the list that show a 0 net savings to unrestricted general fund because they're coming from a restricted source. So is the thinking that as you eliminate, let's say, a position, if you're freeing up restricted funds, then those could be used for something else that then later free up general funds?
Potentially. So because it's frustrating, I know, but this has to go in layers, right? So we start with layer 1 and we see where we are, and then we go to layer 2 and see what the need is. And so, as we're looking through this, we have a couple of positions in here that are restricted funded. As we go into the next layer, will we be able to use that restricted funding to offset something else? And if not, then is it better just to keep the service, right? So those are the positions, the ones with the 0. Those are the ones that we're looking at. Is there a need to cut it? Is there a benefit to cutting the position? And in some cases, there might not be, because when we have restricted funds and we can only use those funds for obviously restricted things, for specific things that we've written plans on or that we have parameters on, then it may be that we can't replicate that and be in compliance. And so it may be that we just continue on with that plan that we don't know. And so we wanted to make sure that you understood that when you talk about, being collaborative and thinking about bringing in revenue and not just cutting everything, that we're looking at this down as many avenues as we can. So if there's a possibility that we can use the EEBG or LRBG plan, I know that's a lot of acronyms, but Educational Effectiveness Block Grant or Learning Recovery Block Grant funds in a different way, then we're going to explore that. We wanted to leave that open, but more than anything, I wanted you to know that we're considering these things. So even if it's a $0 being cut from Gen Fund, I still want you to know that we're considering, is there a possibility we could move that funding and offset the general fund?
Clerk Brickler, again, when I see in 24-25, the idea of reducing a vice principal position, I don't know where we are in our hiring process for that. That's currently vacant, or as far as I know, it's a vacant position. It makes me wonder, I don't know what the impact is because it was mentioned as a 0, but it's hard to imagine hiring somebody for 1 year when they know that their position would be eliminated the following year.
Absolutely. So the original intent was to hire the position. And we're using restricted funds for that, and it doesn't hurt the general fund. But we have not gotten any applicants that have been willing to come to a second interview or even really to an interview. I've talked to people on the phone, but no one's really come in. Now that we're into the year, and we're looking at our true enrollment, EV Kane is down below the 500. And as you know, the board adopted that, for 500 students at the middle school, that there is that there could be one vice principal. So when we're looking at our projected enrollment was a little bit higher. So we can make a case for using supplemental concentration funds for that vice principal. Now that we don't have applicants, we're partway in the year and our enrollment is below, I'm still trying to hire. Okay. And yes, it is harder to hire someone for a temporary position partway into the year. That is true. However, there are people looking for a way out of the job they're in and into management. And so when I've spoken with people, my comment to them is, if you're looking for management, this may be 1 year, it may be longer. We don't know yet. And I really don't know. And I'm going to be very honest about that because, again, going back to communication and transparency, that's absolutely important to us. But if you're looking for, for a step out of where you are and into management, this could be a good year for you. Right. And so I do hear what you're saying, that it may not be very appealing, but it may be appealing to somebody who's looking for that step out. And then having said all that, we need to see where we land with enrollment and with our supplemental concentration, because as you know, there was a point in time where we lost some of our concentration, which is what spun us into the whole transportation issue we had. So I have to always be prepared that if we lose our concentration funding, that what we're spending the money on may need to be reduced as well. So I hear everything you're saying, and I've thought of it. I've considered that, and I'm having open, transparent conversations. We're not giving up on trying to hire the position. I thought we had someone. We were so close, and then they didn't come. But so I hope that answered what you were asking. Okay.
Is there any way, just with that question being asked, that we could kind of bring back those student to staff ratios? I'm not sure if this board ever got to kind of see those ratios. I know that's a new request. I apologize, but it would be nice to see what it looks like student to staff.
I can email this out to everybody.
Sorry, this is President Holt. Trustee Russ, are you saying the ones that were recommended in this plan? Sorry, or
we had gone through with a consultant, the last board, what the appropriate staff to student ratio is, from teachers to paraeducators to vice principals to counselors. And it shows you kind of whether you have a full-time educator or you have a part-time, and what is recommended, right?
Okay.
So it's kind of nice to
And
look.
is that recommended or mandated by Ed Code, state law, or just recommended by that consultant?
May I clarify? So there are two different ratios. I think the one that you're referencing in the plan is regarding teacher to student.
I was just trying to figure out what.
But then there was another full kind of set of recommendations that's not tied to Ed Code. It's kind of like, this is the best practice. If you have a school with 500 students, you're going to need these various support staff and this much administration. And so it was really more focused on like, how many custodians do you need as student populations change or vary within a school site? So I think I think it's a good point. I don't know that you guys have almost been here for a year, but the relatively new trustees have not seen that.
Thank you.
Yeah. So that's what the interim superintendent was referencing when she was talking about, EV Kane having gone under 500 students, so that it's like no longer recommended that you have it's always nice to have a vice principal, but
Right.
When you exceed 500, I think it was recommended.
This President, I think we approved that this year. I don't remember what meeting, but I remember specifically discussing
Okay,
that one.
great.
So we did cover that. So thank you. So
I have this is Clerk Brickler again, and I know that we've talked a lot about staff being the majority of our budget, but I also would like to go back to whether there are opportunities for cuts within the services and other operating expenditures category. I know some of these we don't have control over, but there are these, very large line items, like the professional, cons serve operating expenses. I don't know if that's consulting services. There are sub agreements for services. I don't know how that is defined. That's the 5,100. I know some of these are our contracted staff that are filling positions that we're unable to fill in-house. But also, if you add up travel and conferences, I don't know if the mileage is just like within campuses or it looks like it's travel related. I'm not sure. And conference expenses, it's, easily $250,000. And I know we need to do some continuing education, but I just don't know if there are other line items that we could be looking into as possible areas for cuts.
So to address the conferences are something that are covered through our Title II funding typically. And with all of the extra COVID money we've gotten, the Educator Effectiveness Block Grant and Learn Recovery Block Grant and such, some of those funds are also paying for conferences. So it may be that what you're looking at is actually restricted and not Gen Fund. And then you asked about, and just a reminder to the board that we are always trying to hire within. So while we are contracting, I don't want to have to contract. And so we're not going to stop trying to recruit. Because you never know who's going to want a job, even if it's, January. So, because first of all, we want to expand our AUSD family to meet the needs of our students, and contracting out while we do get to know our contracted, employees and they do become part of our family, because that's what we do here in Auburn. It is more efficient for us and more fiscally sound to hire our own employees.
And if I could just really quick, CBO Leslie. So, and as she'd mentioned, it could be restricted. And sometimes when you see like the two columns, like there's restricted, which, rounds in many other things, but they really do consider like our supplemental concentration to be unrestricted, even though it has its own resource code. So that's why we have to be kind of careful with those. The other piece is we really want to make sure that we can identify, especially for the County Office of Education, and for our community partners, that we have a guaranteed set. So, of ongoing cuts. So if we say, hey, we're going to cut, like this conference or whatever, I'm going to insert whatever, because it really could be a mixed bag. It's really hard to nail down that we know we're going to save X amount each time, because we've continued to reduce. And I know we've really been examining all of those types of things. Anything additional from general fund as far as budget transfers or any additions to budgets have to come to cabinet now. So we've instilled a lot of those things. And I think we're really kind of hoping that those types of things that we can net in savings will end up kind of rounding out our savings to get us a little bit closer to, the goal as well.
And I think that's been kind of a theme that you've heard tonight between the presentations and what we're talking about now, is that, we've directed staff to clean up their their systems and look for things that we're actually not using that we're budgeting for. We have done that as well. And so, that is really the underlying goal for this year, is to make sure that what we have is really what we're using, so that we can, be more fiscally sound.
This is President Holt. Among those attachments was the proposed fiscal reductions, multi-year projections. Is that including these proposals on the page?
Yes, so thank you so much. CBO Leslie here again, sorry. Yes, so everything that's listed out in the sheet that has the headings is encompassed either in ongoing, or we did make the move to put the proposed step and column freezes as a one-time instead in 24-25. So you'll see that in a separate column on the multi-year projection. Now, so just a couple of things to point out to everyone, and I've written it in some of the descriptions down here, but the beginning balance, as you go towards the bottom column, where it wants to know what you start out with, this year, that was updated to the unaudited actuals. No other budget lines have really been touched at this point, because we really were just kind of lumping those savings together to give an example of what this might look like. So again, this includes everything, but as you know, quite a few of the items, or some of the items, are negotiable, which means that they would have to go to our bargaining partners. So it's just, we need to keep in mind that this was kind of like our idea dump of, anything and everything, as we work together to kind of come up with this with administration and staff. And if those just were not to go through, if we were unable to negotiate those types of things, those would just be savings that we wouldn't capture. So we would just kind of have to slowly kind of reduce how much. And in the same term, there are some items such as the originally adopted K-8 program at all 3 sites, which this is only staff that we've identified. It's possible that we have other staff that we'd be able to move to other types of restricted funding or one-time funding. There may be some other net savings, but we really just tried to keep it as conservative as possible on these estimates, with stuff we knew we could back up with positions in position control.
President Holt, are there any additional questions on this?
I guess I would just say that the change to K-8 at all 3 sites would just require so much more discussion. I mean, we already are impacted at Auburn L, and it's hard to wrap my mind around how that would be implemented.
This is President Holt, and that'll be
Yeah.
on next month's agenda. So we can discuss that at that time a little bit further in detail. With that being said, thank you, Superintendent and CBO, for putting together these aren't easy for anybody. So thank you for putting these together and continuing to work on writing this budget so we will still have a district going forward. New requests. I think Clerk Brickler, you had one.
Yes, this is Clerk Brickler, an update on the Williams report facilities items and when they are resolved, please.
Trustee Ross, there is, I'd love to hear an update on the community school grant and Prop 28 grant, just kind of what we're doing, what we're still looking at. Is that still something we're accepting? When does that come into play? And then I would love to see what we can do about these shade structures. Our schools desperately need these shade structures. So if we could look into that, and I know with rain coming up, and it would just be so nice to have something. And then the water fill-up stations, when we're looking at putting those in.
So I'm going to assume that if it's proposed and there's no conversation that the board agrees with, wow, I'm not able to talk. I don't know what's going on here. That the board agrees with the update. So I'm just going to go ahead and write things down. And then if there's any conversation, I'll let you have it and give me different directions. So,
And to that end, if we could just ask one request at a time so everybody can kind of look to the superintendent or have that discussion. The shade structures request, want to touch on that? I mean, Trustee Ross, would you just back us a little bit on that? I mean, is that a plan of motion? We're just trying to get it done.
We had I believe it was in a grant.
May I jump in? Well,
Nope, go ahead.
it was part of some of the COVID one-time dollars. So there was an identification that we wanted shade structures, but then maybe CBO Leslie can update us because I think the cost was in reality was much higher and it triggered Department of State architecture reviews. It was much more complicated and kind of the feasibility was in question.
Okay. I think actually then, maybe we can get that update next time from CBO, not necessarily right now. So thanks for backfilling that. So just kind of an update on what's going on with that, I think was Trustee Ross's request, which I think CBO would be fulfilling for us next month then. I assume the bottle fill stations was the same thing. The COVID funds we identified for that. Okay. And then the update on the grants.
So I have update on Williams facilities. On the timeline for that, an update on community schools and Prop 28. An update on shade structures and bottle filling stations and such along the lines of the ESSER grant. And then all of the items the board would need to approve that go on in October. And then I also heard earlier the board mentioned moving forward with the appraisal. Okay.
And Trustee Ross, with some of those, would you be satisfied with an email or would you like that in our next meeting?
Email is fine. It's
Okay.
totally, completely fine. Thank you for
And-
asking.
Absolutely. And Clerk Blake, same the Williams report update?
Yes.
Okay.
Okay.
May I request that we look into the 9 PM rule and whether or not we've removed it or,
Absolutely.
okay.
Trustee Ross, I'm sorry, one more request, just because the drywall, I already made that, but if we could look into the drywall, I do believe it was kindergarten and TK or one or the other, but there was some drywall issues going on.
And would that be via email or via?
Email is
Uh,
fine.
okay.
Thank you.
I'm taking better notes nowadays. Thank you.
Okay. Are there any additional new requests? All right, seeing none, it is 9:52 and this meeting is adjourned.